Bilal Sunni Ali joins the ancestors. When he was born on 13th July, 1948, his parents named him William R. Johnson, by father Robert Lloyd Johnson and mother Lois Ethel Johnson. His name would later become Bilal Sunni Ali, and it would long reverberate in the worlds of black radical politics and music. Music moved him as a third grader, where he picked up the clarinet and later the tenor sax and the flute. Apparently, he had a thing for woodwinds. He started a band when he was 12 years old. His first band was named The Symphony. He and his bandmates said their group played music from heaven. This was the same age when he met a man who wrote detective stories. His name, Gil Scott-Heron. Gil Scott-Heron later found fame as a forerunner of rap, a wonderful poet, and a singer of considerable range and power. A few years later, Sunni Ali and other band members would form the Simba Drummers and Dancers, where they wore dashikis, or African-style garments for men. His fellow bandmates included Eddie Adenola Knowles and Cosmic Charlie Saunders. When Bilal was 22, he joined the famous Midnight Band, which backed Gil Scott-Heron. But he didn't just join bands. As a teenager, he met Lumumba Shakur and Zaid Malik Shakur, and also Sekou Odinga. These were the guys who helped found the Harlem and Bronx chapters of the Black Panther Party in New York. So Bilal Sunni Ali wasn't just a talented musician. He was a revolutionary as well. In 1975, he went underground and reportedly worked for Black freedom and national independence in the Black Liberation Army. From his earliest to his latest years, he believed that music was a powerful tool of human healing. Sheikh Baba Bilal Kumeben Sunni Ali passed his last breath on December 30th, 2024, surrounded by his many children, his numerous grandchildren, his ex-wives, and his wives. He was surrounded by an ocean of love. Now he plays music with the ancestors, with love, not fear. This is Mumia Abu Jamal.
Until the philosophy which old one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned. Everywhere is war. It's a war.
Should we call him King Charles, or maybe DJ Royal Chuck? King Charles III has launched an Apple Music playlist of his favorite songs. It dropped today for Commonwealth Day, which is celebrated among a group of mostly former British colonies. NPR's Lauren Freyer reports from London.
In a video posted to social media, King Charles sits at a big wooden desk at Buckingham Palace with a vintage radio on-air sign lit up, talking about his love of disco, reggae, and Afro beats.
It has that remarkable ability to bring happy memories.
Then the video cuts to a military marching band outside the palace playing Bob Marley.
So this is what I particularly wanted to share with you. Songs which have brought me joy.
This playlist fit for a king is called the King's Music Room. The palace says it's the soundtrack of King Charles's life, from 1930 standards to Kylie Minogue.
The song is The Locomotion, and this is music for dancing. Again, it has that infectious energy which makes it, I find, incredibly hard to sit still.
I find it quite hard to conjure the image. And when I do conjure the image of listening to this stuff, I find it quite disturbing. So, you know.
Alexis Petridis, pop music critic at The Guardian, says he has some doubt as to whether the king really made this playlist himself. It is kind of hard to imagine Charles and Camilla rocking out to Crazy in Love by Beyonce or Hot, Hot, Hot by Arrow, but maybe not.
Who knows what goes on behind the doors of Buckingham Palace? Maybe it's a non-stop party soundtracked by Afrobeats.
The occasion for the King's debut playlist is Commonwealth Day. And so it's no coincidence that many of the songs are from those 56 countries with past ties to the British Empire. Ties, though, which have frayed in recent years, amid calls for reparations for slavery and other injustices that were part of the empire.
It's a bit more of a fraught relationship now than it ever was.
Corinne Fowler is an expert on colonialism at the University of Leicester in England. She recalls how, when the king's son and daughter-in-law, Kate and William, tried to make a similar gesture of goodwill with a tour of Commonwealth nations in the Caribbean 3 years ago,
they had a lot of crowds of people demonstrating and really pushing for reparations.
Barbados had recently dropped the king as its head of state. Other countries say they'll follow suit. And so the idea of a playlist about the Commonwealth coming from the king...
Well, I can't speak for the citizens of Commonwealth nations, obviously, but I imagine it feels like it's glossing over a lot of these ever-deepening fault lines.
She says it might sound a little tone-deaf. In his defense, the 76-year-old monarch says his playlist reflects the, quote, wonderfully diverse tapestry of the modern Commonwealth. And beyond, actually, because it includes a handful of acts like Beyonce and Diana Ross from America, which managed to escape its royal ties quite a long time ago. Lauren Freyer, NPR News, London.
Mr. Doe, going on in your country right now in Vietnam is 4,000 little kids who are in quarantine camps away from their parents because of this fake scamdemic. And you come to my country and you act like one of these communist parasites, I ask you to go the back to Vietnam.
Lord. The technology behind the COVID-19 vaccines is under scrutiny. The National Institutes of Health is looking into agency-funded research of the cutting-edge technology NPR has found, and this could be a prelude to funding cuts. The move comes after the Trump administration has taken other steps to scale back vaccine research. NPR health correspondent Rob Stein joins us now. Hey, Rob.
Hey, Juana.
So, Rob, with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. taking over at the Department of Health and Human Services, there have been a number of questions about how his past anti-vaccine advocacy could affect federal health agencies. What is the latest at NIH?
NPR has reviewed internal NIH documents from an employee who wasn't authorized to share them that show officials are seeking information about funding of so-called mRNA technology. That's the foundation of the Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech COVID vaccines. The acting NIH director last week requested a full accounting of all vaccine research involving mRNA technology that the agency funds, and has collected information about at least 130 grants from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases alone. These are grants to scientists around the country who are studying mRNA technology to develop vaccines for a variety of diseases, including COVID, but also malaria, Lyme disease, and a sometimes deadly gastrointestinal bug.
Any indication why the NIH is doing this?
We really don't. We asked both the NIH and the Department of Health and Human Services for comment, but haven't heard anything back. But remember, mRNA technology was used by President Trump's Operation Warp Speed to quickly create the first COVID vaccines. Others that came later used more conventional methods. The mRNA vaccines are considered a scientific triumph, but they became a lightning rod for criticism because of vaccine mandates. They were also embroiled in misinformation, such as, false claims that they're unsafe or could even modify a person's DNA. So this call for information is seen as ominous both inside and outside the NIH. I talked about this with Justin Richner. He's at the University of Illinois, Chicago. He has a $1 million 4-year grant from the NIH to develop an mRNA vaccine against dengue. That's a nasty mosquito-borne disease that affects millions of people around the world and is spreading in the U.S.
I am on pins and needles constantly. I'm really kind of waiting for the shoe to drop in terms of looking for the email saying the grant has been canceled. It is very concerning that they're going after this type of research. To shut down research entirely is really short-sighted and misguided. If these cuts go through, this is going to have a profound impact on infectious disease research.
Richner stresses that mRNA vaccines have been given to millions of people around the world and are very safe and effective. But I should point out that HHS is also reviewing a contract to develop an mRNA vaccine against the bird flu, which is spreading among poultry and dairy cows, raising fears it could spark another pandemic.
Rob, as I understand it, these are not the only recent NIH moves related to vaccines, correct?
That's right. NPR has also seen internal NIH emails about studies the agency is funding to understand vaccine hesitancy and uptake. Why parents and others are hesitant to get themselves or their kids vaccinated. That's a big growing problem, especially in the wake of the pandemic and especially now with the measles making a comeback. According to an NIH employee who did not want to be identified because they were not authorized to speak publicly, 42 grants to study vaccine hesitancy and uptake have already been terminated, and those terminations came after the same kind of call for information we're seeing now for the mRNA vaccine research.
Are there other areas where the NIH is cutting grants?
Yes, absolutely. As my colleague Will Stone has found, the NIH has also terminated some research on LGBTQ and other vulnerable groups with health disparities to comply with the president's executive orders related to gender and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
That's NPR health correspondent Rob Stein. Thank you.
You bet.
Medical apartheid. The dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times to the present.
I'm Dr. Gregory Kerfman, the executive editor of JAMA. I'm speaking today with Dr. Michael Lipnick and Dr. Philip Bickler, both of whom are professors of anesthesia at UCSF. And they are co-authors on a recent perspective article now published at JAMAnetwork.org, which is entitled Pulse Oximetry and Skin Pigmentation, New Guidance from the FDA. Welcome to the podcast, Drs. Lipnick and Bickler.
It's great to be with you.
To start us off, Dr. Bickler, can you give our listeners a brief description of pulse oximetry and the mechanism by which it works?
In simplest terms, you can think about oximeters as devices that measure the color of blood. Blood changes colors as oxygen levels vary, from a bright red when there's lots of oxygen bound to hemoglobin to more of a rust or brown color when there is less oxygen. And it's a favorite game among anesthesiologists, and especially in our testing lab, to try to guess the saturation of a blood sample based on the color. Turns out that the human eye is not very good at it. But fortunately, oximeters can quantify the color changes in blood by shining at least 2 wavelengths of light through the tissue, and these are red and infrared wavelengths. The devices are not interested in venous blood, so effectively mathematically subtract out the non-pulsatile signal from venous blood, and thereby determine the saturation of hemoglobin with oxygen. This requires some mathematical formulas and calibration. And in theory, this idea is relatively straightforward, but in practice, it's more complex. And this is the reason that each new pulse oximeter intended for clinical use has to be verified in healthy adult subjects during induced hypoxemia. And this makes sure that the math, hardware, and software of the device yields a reliable oxygen saturation.
Can you talk a little about this process?
There are 2 leading regulatory frameworks for pulse oximeters. The first is the U.S. Food and Drug Administration that provides recommendations for pulse oximeter performance, and this is also known as the 510K clearance pathway. The second is the International Organization for Standardization Pulse Oximeter Standard. It's also known as ISO 80601. These are very lengthy technical documents, but in a nutshell, pulse oximeters intended for medical use are recommended to be tested in healthy adults during controlled induced hypoxemia studies. Participants breathe through a mouthpiece, and the fraction of inspired oxygen is lowered by increasing nitrogen. CO2 is also bled into the circuit to avoid lightheadedness from hypocapnia. And during the test, we target multiple plateaus of oxygenation ranging from 99% down to 70%. Once the participant reaches a stable oxygen level, a blood sample is drawn from an arterial line in a radial artery and measured on a co-oximeter, also known as a blood gas analyzer, to report the functional oxygen saturation. And that, for us, is a gold standard. The functional saturation from the co-oximeter is compared to the saturation reading from the pulse oximeter, and statistical methods are applied to either calibrate the oximeter or assess the performance of the device.
I wonder if you could briefly discuss how might darker skin pigmentation affect the function of oximeters, and what is the mechanism here?
Well, we don't know completely. There are several theories. Very few have been published, and we suspect that there are several with intellectual property protection that are being kept private for now. Some of the most common theories essentially postulate that melanin in the skin impacts either the absorption characteristics of light passing through the tissue or impacts the overall signal to noise ratio in such a manner that results in the saturation being different from the actual arterial saturation. This is an effect which we refer to as bias. And most of the time, the bias is in the positive direction, so that melanin in the skin or tissues tends to make the pulse oximeter read too high. Hence the concern about overestimating the saturation and missing the diagnosis of clinically significant hypoxemia.
For our clinician listeners, can you give us an idea of just how significant the clinical problem is of oximeter dysfunction in relation to skin pigmentation? Is this a very consistent problem?
Yes, and it's the crux of the issue. Anytime we have health and healthcare disparities linked to a medical intervention, that's a big problem. Based on the data published thus far, the problem requires serious attention. During COVID, our hypoxia lab was asked time and again, is it only 1 or 2% difference that's troubling the oximeters, and is that really a big deal? This was coming from hospital systems, global aid donors, and our clinician colleagues. And the answer turns out to be nuanced. On the one hand, it is true that a 1 to 2% difference in oxygen saturation is not likely to result in markedly different pathophysiologic consequences like end organ damage or mortality. And this was the prevailing feeling among many pulse oximeter research from the 1980s until now. And it's probably part of the reason the problem did not receive more attention. So while the physiologic consequences of the SpO2 bias may in most cases be minimal, it is also true that small differences could result in patients receiving different care because of this difference in care that they have different outcomes based on the color of their skin. This was historically underappreciated, but multiple studies during COVID for the first time highlighted that this indeed may be happening. And it is not hard to wonder if the bias was worse in people with lightly pigmented skin. Would this problem have been taken more seriously long ago?
The FDA has just come out with new guidance regarding oximeters to try to address this problem. And I wonder if you could briefly discuss the new FDA guidance, what it says, and what its implications are.
In January of this year, FDA released a draft of its new guidance for medical pulse oximeters with a focus on improving equitable performance across skin colors. The last update to the guidance was in 2013, and the new 2025 guidance draft has some key changes. Probably the biggest change involves increasing the size of study cohorts used for device performance verification in the controlled desaturation studies that we do, the ones we talked about earlier. From the current enrollment of about 10 to 12 subjects up to 150 subjects. So a dramatic increase in the size of the studies required for performance evaluations and regulatory clearance. Another big change is better methods for ensuring the diversity of skin pigment in the study cohort. Previously, the small cohorts of 10 to 12 people were recommended to have at least 2 people with dark skin pigment, but the guidance did not say how skin pigment was to be measured or what constitutes light and dark. So the common practice in the industry was to use the visual analog scales with 6 to 10 colors ranging from light to dark and to rate study participants subjectively. And using scales which have many problems, not the least of which is operator bias of the person assigning the colors. In the new 2025 draft guidance, FDA recommends measuring skin color in 2 ways. The first is using the Monk Skin Tone Scale, which is the only standardized 10 color scales that was designed specifically with diversity of human skin color in mind. And the second is using a spectrophotometer to actually measure the color of the skin. It's like if you went to the hardware store to match a paint color. Color can be quantified. There are a number of devices out there that can do this for skin. And while there is no complete consensus on the method, a widely used and validated approach is the use of what's called the ITA, which is an established surrogate for melanin. Using these methods, a new guidance recommends ensuring the proportion of participants that are light, medium, and dark is more equally distributed than the prior guidance, where only 2 of 10 study participants were recommended to be darkly pigmented. So it encompasses the full range of human skin pigmentation. In addition, there are several less noticeable but important changes in the new draft. This includes recommending reporting of consecutive participants to avoid cherry picking of only participants in who the devices perform well. Also, there is a new recommendation to collect more data from pediatric population in the clinical environment using convenience sampling, because obviously it's not ethical to conduct controlled desaturation studies in children. There are new statistical tests and metrics that are recommended to reduce the chances that a poor performing device makes it to market. Notably, the draft is open to public comment until March 10th. But even once finalized, it is technically not a regulation or legally enforceable, though most of the manufacturers, at least in the US, are anticipated to follow because they would like their devices to be cleared when they submit their applications to the FDA. We view that overall, these are very positive steps, and the FDA should be commended for raising the bar. That said, the bar was previously pretty close to the floor, and there is a lot more that can be done. And there are several elements in the draft guidance that, if refined, would strengthen the document and provide better health equity. And included in that list are objective use of the ITA is now added for some of the statistical analysis and to define the darkest half of the darkly pigmented cohort, but it leaves the door open for a device to reach the market with a significant portion of the darkly pigmented cohort not being truly dark. It's an easy fix, and one that the ISO is likely going to make, to include the Monk Skin Tone Scale, but rely on the ITA and other objective measures to define light and dark. And a more complex matter is of sample size. While the sample size of 10 was widely acknowledged as too small, the optimal size is not a straightforward power calculation. There's no question that the sample should be bigger, and needs to be as big as needed to ensure equitable device performance. But the reality is a study sizes of 150 are not necessarily going to demonstrate equitable performance, and an adaptive study design is likely viable. And the FDA needs to provide more guidance and flexibility on that. If that's not done, there are some major potential problems that could arise, including device market rapidly shrinking, prices increasing, access to devices decreasing, especially in low resource, low income countries. And even with these large cohorts, there still may be devices reaching the market that in reality no better than those under the old guidance. And this brings us to our last point, and that is for the devices to reach market, they're tested in healthy adults in a controlled lab setting. Performance in patients in the real world is different. Some have argued for more real-world clinical testing of devices prior to reaching the market, but a more pragmatic approach may be to try to make lab studies better mimic the real world. And there are certainly ways to do that. So that's an open opportunity to test devices under more challenging situations that may be similar to some of the challenges that are faced in the real world. And the new guidance has lots of recommendations on better communication and performance to clinicians. But if those communications are buried in fine print in the product manual, and fundamentally the diversity of cohorts is uncertain, and the translation of lab performance to the real world performance in patients is uncertain, then the impact of the newly updated guidance may be limited.
Dr. Lipnick, I wonder if we could turn to you, and I wonder if you could tell us what are the next steps in addressing this problem with oximeters?
Thanks, Dr. Kerfman. I think a big next step is going to be validation. The new draft guidance from the FDA, like Dr. Bickler was saying, it's a great step forward. There are a lot of really positive changes there, but there's a lot of uncertainty also. Uncertainty in how this is going to impact the market. We need to make sure that the implementation of these new regulatory frameworks actually translates into more equitable care, better performing devices, while also preserving access to oximetry, which is a major global health challenge.
Dr. Lipnick, do you have any final thoughts or lessons learned for our listeners?
One final comment. A lot of folks have suggested, well, why don't we just introduce a correction factor for a certain device manufacturer or a certain skin pigment type? And I would urge caution with this. A lot of the retrospective studies, as Dr. Bickler said, found positive bias in the 1% to 2% range, meaning the oximeters tended to overestimate the true saturation, making a patient potentially appear better than they really are. But it's important to note that some studies have shown negative bias, and some studies are showing that devices may have little or no bias. So the upshot is all devices perform quite differently, and we don't yet understand why this is, but it does suggest that universally adding a correction factor for patients with dark skin pigment or for a certain manufacturer of device may not be the best approach. I think understanding imperfection in pulse oximetry and avoiding the use of absolute SpO2 cutoffs as the primary factor that clinicians are using to decide who gets care and who does not get care may be much more important. It is underappreciated, but a good approach while we're waiting for more data on this matter. A lot of large studies are coming out soon. Hopefully we'll shed light on what clinicians should be doing at the bedside or home care users should be doing to optimize safety and health equity. But I would encourage the listeners, clinicians, the scientific community to pay close attention. I think we're going to learn a lot in the coming months, but the story is just beginning to be told, and we're just beginning to understand how to optimize patient care using pulse oximeters, which at the end of the day are an essential device, and clinicians should continue to use them, but perhaps with a slightly different lens than we have in the past.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bickler and Dr. Lipnick, for this very interesting discussion, a very important clinical issue that we'll be following very closely as time goes forward. I'm Dr. Gregory Kerfman. I've been speaking with Dr. Philip Bickler and Dr. Michael Lipnick about the effect of skin pigmentation on the function of pulse oximeters.
My son, that every once in a while makes a cameo on the show, Gray, has about 5 things he will eat in his whole life in his rotation. Okay. A vegetable is not in there. He'll eat fruit, but vegetables he will not touch. Grilled cheese, turkey sandwich, corn dogs, every once in a while, a chicken tender, and that's about it. Maybe 4 things, donuts.
As you may know, Congress wants to cut health care costs, and some lawmakers contend that one way to do that is for doctors to have more nutrition training to better fight diseases like diabetes. How that's taught is up to each medical school. Corey Young of Alabama Public Radio sat in on one class in a kitchen.
Olives, zucchini, mushrooms, and whole wheat dough sit on the island of the teaching kitchen at the University of South Alabama. A group of medical students wearing crisp white aprons crowd around the ingredients. They're here to learn how to cook food as medicine. Connor Martin plans to be an internist, but says he was in the dark when talking with patients about diet.
I would give them pamphlets and stuff, but I would not really be able to go in depth and explain it. And so that's why this course has been really helpful and exciting.
Today's lesson is carbohydrates. One of the teachers is physiology professor David Weber. He throws out some staggering numbers.
Average person in the U.S. eats 100 pounds of sugar per year.
100 pounds. The students are shocked. That's the reaction Weber hopes to get from his students. The idea is if doctors realize what their patients eat, they can ask better questions and give advice. As they work on their pizzas, Rachel Motammed tells her classmates about the last homework assignment, which was to cook something healthy.
Actually, for one of my recipes, I made a kale salad. Oh, no way.
Motammed wants to go into psychiatry. She's been in this class for a month and says she gets it.
I want to emphasize nutrition and wellness as a means of medicine, not just a supplement to a medication.
That's the message Dr. David Eisenberg hopes all doctors understand. Eisenberg is director of culinary nutrition at Harvard. He was part of a group of medical professionals who published more than 30 nutrition competencies they want medical students to be tested on.
These are no longer competencies that are nice to have. They're competencies that one must have.
They include things like how to talk about food with sensitivity, understand the difference between minimally processed and ultra-processed foods, or explain food labels to patients. But they're far from becoming a requirement.
So we really eat the entire plant.
Back in the kitchen, the pizzas are in the oven, and it's time to make the salad. Dr. Bob Israel is showing students how to slice a fennel bulb to mix with oranges.
It's not a vegetable you want to put a big old chunk of.
He's the director of this kitchen and says teaching med students to cook is a lot like surgery. It's hard to tell someone how to cut a tomato or an onion, but
if they see it done and then do it themselves, it's a lot easier for them to envision themselves doing it.
The pizza is done.
Pretty.
For Connor Martin, the class was enlightening, and a lot surprised him.
Honestly, a lot of the things that are in our foods that I wish I did not know, but I know now.
And now he may tell his future patients what's in their food. For NPR News, I'm Corey Young in Mobile, Alabama.
As your body grows bigger, your mind must flower. It's great to learn, 'cause knowledge is power. It's Schoolhouse Rocket, a chip off the block on your favorite Schoolhouse
Content neutral and conducive to a positive learning environment.
Mm-hmm.
That's the policy.
Right. And I was told that it's not content neutral, that it's a personal opinion.
A West Ada school teacher is being told to remove 2 signs of inclusion from her middle school classroom because the school district says it violates policy. Sarah Inama has taught world civilization to 6th graders at Lewis and Clark Middle School for the past 4 years. And for the past 4 years, Sarah had these signs up in her classroom. One that said, "Everyone in this room is welcome, important, accepted, respected, encouraged, valued, and equal," written over the colors of the rainbow. And another that said, "Everyone is welcome here," showing hands of various skin tones, hearts in the palm, those kind of things. Pretty benign signs if you look at them. And before we go any further with this, the sign with the rainbow colors, not the same as an LGBTQ flag, although Sarah says she's very much an ally, she just doesn't advertise it in her classroom. So for 4 years, these signs have survived sans harassment. Nobody said a word about them. That is, until about a month ago.
My building administration came to me during my lunch period and told me that they needed to be taken down by the end of the day. They told me that they were in violation of district policy because in today's political environment, they're considered a personal opinion.
Did they say somebody complained about them?
No. I asked if anyone had complained about them, and they said, no, we just want to protect you from that if that were to happen.
In this political environment,
Mm-hmm.
that is not acceptable.
Yeah, I was told a couple things. That everyone is welcome here is not something that everybody believes. So that's what makes it a personal opinion.
You were told this?
Mm-hmm.
That not everybody believes everyone is welcome?
Right.
Okay. And who told you this? Who was the one saying that not everyone believes this?
My building administration and district personnel.
Face to face, they told you this?
Mm-hmm.
What was your response to that?
Because I was told to take it down by the end of the day, I did so. And the following few days, I just was so unsettled by it. And so I went back into my classroom and put it back up. And I emailed my principal and said, I don't agree. I don't agree that this is a personal opinion. I feel like this is the basis of public education.
And what was the response to that?
They came to talk to me and again asked me to take it down. And I said, I'm not interested in taking it down.
That's when the district higher-ups got involved. In an email exchange with Chief Academic Officer Marcus Myers, he highlighted the section of district policy he says Sarah's signs violated, including the advancement of individual beliefs and district facilities should be content neutral. But more specifically, Myers pointed to Idaho Code, the Dignity and Non-Discrimination in Public Education Act, which says district employees and students shall respect the dignity of others and acknowledge the right of others to express differing opinions. And they're saying that putting up a poster that says everyone is welcome is a violation of that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because everyone is welcome here, especially since the poster emphasizes in regards to skin color with the images of the hands, that is considered something that people have differing views on.
And the differing view would be racist?
I mean, I can't even wrap my head around what other differing view of it would be. I mean, except for something that's exclusionary. So everyone is welcome here really isn't a personal statement. It's non-discrimination. It's verbatim on our Explorer Way posters.
That's true. Sarah says these posters, made by the middle school principals and put up in every classroom, lay out what it means to be a Lewis and Clark explorer, welcome others, and embrace diversity. Isn't everyone is welcome here the same thing?
It is welcoming others, and it is embracing diversity. And these are the students that are in our community. I just feel like, as a teacher, and I feel like probably a lot of teachers share this sentiment, I would do anything to protect my students. I love all of them unconditionally. We protect them from danger. Quite literally would take a bullet for these students. And this is the one small thing that I feel like I can do to speak out against this and stand up for them, to protect them from being affected by racist sentiments affecting their classroom. I find it hard to grapple with the fact that the reason why this poster needs to come down is because there are people outside of our school that disagree with it.
Sarah says she realizes it's just a poster, and she knows her students already know they are welcome. But this is about principle. She told us it's important to not be complacent in something she feels is just wrong. To be clear, we did reach out to the West Ada School District several times to get their take on these signs. But we were told Marcus Myers, that'd be the chief academic officer, is, quote, not interested in being interviewed. Please refer to the statement we sent earlier, they said. A statement that does not answer any of the questions Sarah Inama had about how, specifically, her everyone is welcome here sign violates district policy. The statement just repeats the part about anything put up in the classroom has to be, quote, content neutral and conducive to a positive learning environment, end quote. It even includes examples of what is allowed, like, well, the Idaho flag, or a flag used to teach world politics, but only temporarily. Say, in a Spanish class, can a Spanish flag be used to show all the countries that speak Spanish? Who knows? You can put up a periodic table in a chemistry class, or you can put up a constitution in a civics class. Got Teacher of the Year? Cool. Display that proudly. Your school won the state wrestling tournament? We'll allow that. Proud of the college you went to or a fan of the Seattle Seahawks? That's fine. Any artwork from the class or a field trip photo, as well as any promotions of school teams and activities, those are all good. Even personal family photos are no problem. The district even put in an including but not limited to clause with this policy, but apparently everyone is welcome here is beyond their limits. In that email, trying to show Sarah where her poster violates policy, the district directed her to that Idaho Code that we mentioned, the Dignity and Non-Discrimination in Public Education Act, passed in 2021. Remember that? Well, because Idaho schools were riddled with critical race theory, this law says, saying anything that, quote, inflames divisions on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, national origin would not be allowed in Idaho public schools. No school shall compel students to personally affirm, adopt, and adhere to any tenet that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior. They told Sarah she had until the end of this school year to remove or replace her signs with something less violating. What if she doesn't? I don't know. The question still remains, what could be less illicit that would elicit less of an uproar than everyone is welcome here? Especially when there's already something in nearly every classroom that says, welcome others and embrace diversity. Other questions to consider. In this rush to be anti-woke, is it possible for the pendulum to swing too far the other way? What about this common sense mantra we've been hearing so much about? Is everyone is welcome here? Is that considered indoctrination? Does it inflame divisions on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, national origin? Well, these are questions Sarah would like answered, which is why she reached out to us. But we got the same response she did. Mr. Myers is not interested in being interviewed or talking about it.
Black people should stay away from each other except when they have a constructive agenda. That's a part of the black code, you might say, or the compensatory code covering that. Why? Because we're full of poison, that's why. Put there by the white supremacists. We're born bathed in poison. And then they turn us loose on each other. And the first thing we do start doing is messing over each other. We should stay away from each other. We're always talking about we got to get together.
Good evening, team friends. Greg and Liz here with you. So we're going to start with what is a busy news day from the WFBI team. All suspects accused of the hazing of Southern University Omega Psi Phi fraternity pledges have now turned themselves in.
Our chief investigator, Chris Nakamoto, has been on top of this one since day one, exposing the initial lies that were reportedly told to investigators. Chris, what have you learned now?
Well, good evening, Liz and Greg. Details in newly released arrest documents show who is accused of hitting Caleb Wilson and goes into specific details about those who were there the night during that hazing ritual. It's what helped investigators get to the truth. Tonight, Caleb is no longer here, and the 3 young lives charged with hazing pledges are facing serious felony charges. 2 of them ended up in handcuffs today, and only the WAFBI team was there as police hauled them away. Isaiah Smith didn't utter a word on his way to a waiting vehicle on his way to jail. This video filmed Tuesday morning after Smith turned himself in to the Violent Crimes Unit in Baton Rouge. Smith is facing felony hazing charges, accused of punching at least one of the pledges. Investigators noted Smith was known as the Dean of Pledges, and it was his car that was used to transport Caleb Wilson's unresponsive body to the hospital, where Wilson was pronounced dead. A court commissioner set his bond at $25,000 for criminal hazing, a felony. We then spoke to his attorney.
Up until this afternoon, we didn't know what the allegations were. We didn't know what, who's accused of doing what. And, in clear print, you can read the affidavit. I read the affidavit for the arrest warrant. In clear print, it's clear that he never made contact with Caleb. Now, that being said, this was a freak occurrence.
The hazing ritual came to light 2 weeks ago. Fraternity members initially reported that Wilson, a student at Southern University, collapsed at this park in Baton Rouge. That was a lie we first exposed. Instead, Wilson was actually at this warehouse, which was being leased by the father of Isaiah Smith.
Isaiah is terribly remorseful about this. This is nothing that anybody wanted. And I think we're still in a state of shock about what's going on. He's a student at Southern. He's a member of a fraternity. He loves the fraternity. He loves the pledges. He loved Caleb. So to be sure, remorse is an understatement.
Smith is among 2 others also implicated in the hazing. Kyle Thurman was captured by U.S. Marshals at this home in Port Allen Monday night. This is video of him as he was escorted from the West Baton Rouge jail back to the jurisdiction where the hazing occurred Tuesday morning. Warrants indicate the Southern pledges were broken up into 2 groups. Thurman allegedly punching the first group with boxing gloves. And this man, Caleb McCrae, allegedly punched the second group. Police say Caleb Wilson was in that second group. McCrae is facing the most serious of the charges, manslaughter, which could carry up to 40 years in prison if convicted, along with a felony hazing charge. Arrest warrants say McCrae is accused of punching Wilson 4 times, at which point Wilson collapsed. His lawyer asking the public not to rush to judgment.
People have a lot of opinions on this case, but there's still a lot of information and variables that are unknown at this time. And so when I ask people to hold off judgment, I'm just simply asking to just trust this criminal justice process, that as the case develops, there's more information we'll learn. And I know it's early to ask for any, empathy or sympathy toward my client, but his life has been altered.
Philip Robinson says Caleb McCrae is grieving tonight.
And he experienced a traumatic event himself. This is a tough situation all the way around. I am confident in my client's innocence. I do feel that my client will have an opportunity to defend himself and give his point of view.
The heartache of Caleb Wilson's death has 2 communities from Baton Rouge to New Orleans facing enormous grief, including at the Pilgrim Baptist Church in Kenner.
Caleb grew up in this church from a baby. He was baptized here, so he's been a member all of his life. As a matter of fact, his entire family, his father and his mother, grandfather, who was a former pastor of this church for 44 years.
Pastor Mitchell Stevens knew Caleb Wilson well and will be there when his life is remembered this weekend for the extraordinary things Wilson did in his short years on earth.
He played his trumpet many times when he was in from college. He would play for one of our worship services, but just seeing him around. So he was always at my house, or my son was at his house. So just missing the closeness of our families.
Southern is planning remembrances on Friday, followed by his funeral at Pilgrim Baptist Church in Kenner on Saturday. McCrae is due back in court in May. Smith is due back in court in June. Right now, jail records show bond has been set at $25,000 for Kyle Thurman. Greg?
All right, Chris Nakamoto for us tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you.
I was one of the first. My first day was state trooper coming, putting me in the back seat of the car, and meeting the other black kids with 6 of us, and seeing all of those parents and also KKK members having signs and throwing cans at us, spitting at us. We lived in the threat of death every day. So I was just lost in this vacuum between integration and segregation and racism. That was my childhood. I was angry for years. Angry. Very angry.
Turn now to one community in Ohio, which is now the center of a growing national debate about civil rights, hate speech, and the Second Amendment. NBC News correspondent and NBC News Now daily anchor Morgan Radford visited the town of Lincoln Heights, where residents have formed an armed community defense group in the wake of a neo-Nazi rally. Morgan joins us now. You were there just on Tuesday. What did the residents tell you about what's going on?
Yeah, I was there just this week. John, it was fascinating because what's interesting is that this town was founded during the Great Migration back in the 20s as a refuge for black citizens, which is why it was especially painful when neo-Nazis suddenly appeared in this 3,000-person majority black town. But they decided to fight back, taking up arms and patrolling their own streets. Now they're at the center of a much larger debate about protection and free speech and who gets it.
These aren't police officers or soldiers.
They're business owners, their fathers, their sons, daughters.
These are civilians, members of the Lincoln Heights Safety and Watch program.
It's a duty. Okay, let's go.
The duty, protecting their neighborhood, the majority black village of Lincoln Heights, Ohio.
Ain't nobody scared of you.
After neo-Nazis held a rally here last month, carrying rifles, waving swastikas, and hurling racial slurs, just moments before children were let out of school. At the time, law enforcement officials said the neo-Nazis did not break any laws, but an investigation by county prosecutors is ongoing. Weeks later, the KKK came with these flyers.
First African-American community above the Mason-Dixon line of staff.
Safety and Watch Group spokesperson Durance Daniels says the police did not do enough. which was more chilling because the town was founded in the 1920s as a safe haven for black residents.
Lincoln Heights is our home. If somebody broke into your home, you call the police, and the police says, you know, if they do it again, we haven't broken any law, so we're just going to allow them to break into your home again. What would you do?
Are you worried at all that having a potentially armed response could just create more friction, create more danger?
I'll answer that by saying I've never felt safer as a black man in my community than I have right now.
The mayor of Evendale, which oversees the police force that responded that day, said in a statement to NBC News, "Our emphasis on de-escalation and public safety resulted in the incident's resolution without injuries to any of the persons involved."
Come on.
But residents here say they can't afford to wait. Every day, the Safety and Watch group escorts children to school and patrols the streets.
Why do you all wear masks?
Those Nazis, we have reports of them finding our backgrounds, so we're not hiding ourselves from the residents, but we're protecting our family for what we're doing out here.
While many locals do support the security group, some, like business owner Eric Ruffin, say they wish the group wasn't needed.
We don't want to become what we hate. You know, we don't want to become a group of people that walk around feeling like we have a reason in America to have to protect ourselves.
And this community,
stand up,
is not backing down.
We contacted the mayor of Evendale's office, and they say that prosecutors are looking at body camera footage of the neo-Nazi rally to see if any criminal charges could be filed. But meantime, the Hamilton County Sheriff is also calling on state lawmakers to pass legislation making it a crime to wear a mask with the purpose of intimidation while open carrying, guys.
So, Morgan, let me ask you, one of the people you interviewed there, a young man, said he's never felt safer in his community than he does now. So this could have an impact nationwide, things like this. I mean, there is a contagion factor in safety. People always seek it. What did the mayor or anybody that you spoke to think about the contagion factor?
Durance, I don't want to speak for him, but after my conversation with him, I feel like I could confidently say he would say the contagion factor has already happened. Because when I asked, is this a reaction to a local moment or a national movement? And he said, look at January 6th. He said, you already have people felt emboldened to come here locally because of what they saw nationally. If you can hang from the building of the hallowed halls of the Capitol and then be pardoned, not be prosecuted, why don't you think you can come to a small village of African Americans, only 3,000 people?
Morgan, does the group have any real authority? But as long as they stay within the confines of the law, they should be okay.
It's a great question. You know, I asked that basically, are you stopping cars when they come in because you think someone looks suspicious? Is that, you know, profiling in its own sort of way? And they said, no. We are patently aware of what our rights are and what our limitations are. They said, we're not officers. What we do is we are trying to cooperate with the police department. So if we see suspicious activity, because remember the KKK came back with flyers just after this rally. So they're saying this is more of a defensive posture to deter people from entering our community and showing them by virtue of our masks, by virtue of our guns, that you can't come here and we're not going to take this punchline down.
All right, an important story, fascinating. NBC News correspondent and NBC News Now daily anchor Morgan Radford. Morgan, thank you. Good to see you.
When you're a cop, you can torment freely and see me valley, then seize it outy, then beam proudly, turn a routine traffic stop to your season finale when you're a cop.
High drama in a Contra Costa County courtroom this week as a former Antioch police officer testified against another officer, over violent behavior while on duty and exchanging racist texts. The scandal has embroiled the Antioch Police Department for several years. ABC 7 News reporter Unser Hussin catches up on the shocking testimony.
New details emerged in the Antioch Police Department's racist texting scandal as officers took the stand in the federal trial that began this week in Oakland.
If we were to just take the common sense interpretation of the language that was used by the witness, we can conclude that he was being completely honest and above board.
Criminal justice professor Greg Woods is talking about Officer Eric Rombo, who instead of standing trial is serving as a witness for the prosecution. He took a plea deal in January. Rombo described how he and Officer Murtaza Amiri knowingly used excessive force, falsified police reports, and made sure their actions weren't caught on body cameras, sometimes rewarding each other with fancy dinners.
Those racial epithets, reducing those individuals whom they encountered to be targets for rubber bullets, to be incentivized through the reward of cookies and filet mignon.
The defense tried to argue that some of the text messages were offensive, but that they were cherry-picked or the meaning exaggerated, says lawyer Ben Nissenbaum. He has a separate civil case against some of the same officers involved in the texting scandal. But Nissenbaum says Rombo's testimony disproves that.
You have an officer saying, no, these were not exaggerations. This was not locker room talk. That injects a dose of reality that I think will be persuasive to every juror.
Also this week, a mistrial was declared for a second officer charged in the case. Nissenbaum says the ruling in Devin Wenger's case came after his lawyer told the judge she couldn't provide effective representation, allegedly due to a lack of resources.
Officer Irie agreed to continue his trial to keep it going on its own, and Officer Wenger's trial will be rescheduled later this year.
Well, it was all problematic. I mean, having, bullet shells on your mantle and saying that those were your trophies, I think was disgusting.
Lamar Hernandez Thorpe was mayor when the texting scandal broke. He praised Officer Rombo for admitting remorse, but he says justice still needs to be served.
It takes a lot of courage to own up to your mistakes, and so I was pleased to see that. And I hope other officers learn from him. And then those who got to be held accountable need to be held accountable for terrorizing this community.
The trial continues next week. In Oakland, Ansar Hassan, ABC 7 News.
White people kill for fun. 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 White people kill for fun.
More than 3 decades after a young mother was stabbed to death in her Springfield home, her toddler nearby in her crib, there is justice for her family tonight. Stefan Smirk was sentenced today to the maximum time possible, 70 years in prison.
He confessed to murder after cold case detectives made a DNA link back in 2023. Our Northern Virginia Bureau Chief Julie Carey was in the courtroom today.
It's been 30 years of unanswered questions, not knowing, and having to endure the trauma that comes with that.
Ollie Lawrence was away on business when his wife was killed. Daughter Nicole, wiping away a tear outside court, was just 2 years old. This entire family shattered in 1994 when Robin Lawrence was found stabbed to death in her home. For 3 decades, they were left to wonder who killed Robin, their grief never easing until 2023, when cold case detectives tied Stefan Smirk to the crime. And now, finally, he's being punished.
While nothing will bring our Robin back, knowing that justice has finally been served may bring us some measure of peace.
The family shedding tears in court as the prosecutor recounted Robin's terrible, painful death. Stefan Smirk was a young soldier in November of 1994 when he went looking for someone to kill. He broke into the victim's house, went to her room, cut the phone cord, and began stabbing her 49 times. His confession to detectives after his arrest, chilling.
There's something came over me. I'm not going to say it like voices in my head. I didn't hear somebody actually talking to me, but it was like this overbearing thought in my brain that I needed to kill somebody. I just had to kill somebody. I can't explain it to you.
Robin Lawrence's little girl Nicole left alone in the house until the terrible scene was discovered. But for 30 years, Smirk lived a normal life, marrying, having children, until he was finally caught and confessed and pleaded guilty. Lawrence's family, telling the judge about their loss, said brother Robert Ward, quote, "The impact of the crime has been devastating beyond measure. No family should endure such prolonged suffering." And Stefan Smirk, speaking to the family for the first time, saying, "No family should have to wait 30 years for justice for a loved one. I'm extremely sorry for the pain and suffering I've caused." But the judge calling the murder, quote, "among the worst in the history of Fairfax County," giving Smirk the maximum sentence, 70 years. Parole was abolished in Virginia 41 days after Robin Lawrence was killed, and that means Stefan Smirk could be eligible for parole someday, but the judge made sure if he ever gets out, he'll be on probation and have to wear a GPS monitor. In Fairfax County, I'm Julie Carey, News 4.
That if you want ultimate expression
of white supremacy and the white supremacist mentality, and you want to put it in the form of one person that I would name, and that's something I very seldom do, it would be Jeffrey Dahmer. He's the ultimate expression of white supremacy. Everything that he was doing, working in a chocolate factory, the whole 9 yards, storing black male bodies in canisters of lye and alcohol and whatnot, got them in the refrigerator, and cannibalism and all of that, and calm, very methodical. Even when questioned by the law enforcement officers, very calm. Hannibal Lecter.
Frozen femurs in the freezer. Jeffrey Dahmer.
In the wake of the murder of a young girl, a bill that would create an alert system for missing indigenous people unanimously passes a Senate committee. And it comes as investigators are still working to find the person or people who killed young Emily Pike. And we're also learning more about the group home where Emily was living. 12 News journalist Bianca Bono joins us live now with more. Bianca.
Troy, we've obtained records and data from the Mesa Police Department giving us more insight into the amount of times they've been called to the group home where Emily lived. That includes the 30 missing persons reports taken over the past 3 years.
I testified
at the Capitol Wednesday. Gila River Indian Community Governor Stephen Rowe Lewis fighting back tears as he talks about Emily Pike while advocating for a bill that would create an alert system for missing indigenous people.
I testified in early February that this legislation is critical. But little did I know at that time Emily Pike had been missing for weeks.
On January 27th, the 14-year-old girl from the San Carlos Apache tribe went missing from the group home in Mesa where she had been living. And on Valentine's Day, her remains were discovered, showing she had been dismembered. Lewis wonders what would have happened had an alert been issued.
Would Emily be alive today?
Emily's case is not the first missing persons case stemming from that same Mesa group home, which 12 News is not identifying for privacy reasons. Mesa police say there were 3 prior calls involving Emily back in 2023. And in the past 3 years, police data shows there have been 89 calls for service to the group home. 42 of those were for a missing person. 30 of those calls resulted in reports being taken. The reason a report would not be taken can vary, but can often be because the person was quickly found.
Every child deserves to be safe.
January Contreras leads Children's Action Alliance and advocates for less children to be placed in group homes.
I come back to the solution of supporting families, supporting grandparents, many grandparents, aunts, uncles are ready to step in. We need to do that, and we need to recruit more foster homes as well.
DCS says while it doesn't believe any action taken or not taken by the group home caused the terrible outcome in Emily's case, they've opened a licensing inquiry to determine whether appropriate steps were taken by the group home, as investigators still work to find Emily's killer. And Governor Lewis's bill advances at the legislature. Contreras hopes Emily's tragic death leads to change. And we have asked Mesa Police how many missing persons cases stemming from that group home over the past 3 years remain open today. They're combing through their data to find that answer for us. And the last update I received from the Gila County Sheriff's Office was that they are continuing to turn up new leads in Emily's case, but still no suspects have been identified. We're live in studio tonight. Bianca Bono, 12 News.
And the person who committed that crime still out there. Bianca, thank you.
They'll be co-workers, work side by side. And all of us working together, we can get it done. Could have told Indians that. Same thing. Some of them did to start off with, but then they got attitude. Say, no, we're going to take it all. We ain't going to leave you nothing. Right? Indians said, well, I thought we were going to share. That's what we sat down at Thanksgiving, and so we all work together and all like that. Well, I don't think that's a good idea. What I need to do is going back to giving you a good whipping, Chief. That's all it was. Chief said there's plenty of land here for everybody. We got more land than we can take care of and whatnot. So, I mean, we welcome you and all like that. Well, no, I'm going to take it all. Give you a bottle of whiskey. That's what you're going to get out of the deal. Right.
Wow.
And that's what they did. And they admit that they did it. They wrote books about it, bragged about it. Yeah, how many Indians were killed today, you know? Only good Indians are dead Indians.
On an otherwise uneventful Wednesday afternoon, 3 men sit on snow machines on a raised patch of tundra looking out toward the frozen Kwethluk River. In front of them, dark clouds of smoke rise up from an area choked with willows and alders, the site of the old Moravian Children's Home. Today, most of the structures that remain are being burned to the ground. According to one of the men, Kwethluk resident Alexander Nikolai, the largest structure that remains was too wet to ignite and will require a return visit.
We tried burning the girls' dorm. That didn't work. That shop, we just burned it down this morning, and then that church, we're burning that this morning too.
2 days earlier, the men also set fire to the iconic 3-story boys' dormitory dating back nearly a century. It was a landmark on the Kwethluk River, roughly 3 miles upriver from the village bearing the same name. In the charred husk of the dorm, relics remain. The metal frame of a tablet school desk, file drawers, snarled inner springs of mattresses, a deformed muffin tin, a backdoor staircase leading to nowhere. At the base of a tall chimney, black letter stenciling reads, MM Dormitory, Moravian Mission, Bethel, Alaska. The buildings, what's left of them, are still owned by the Moravian Church. Just like the Moravian missionaries that established the site in 1926, the decision to destroy what remained of the children's home came from the nearby hub of Bethel. Reverend Clifford Jimmy, president of the Alaska Moravian Church in Bethel, says the church's ruling body, or synod, had discussed raising the property for the past 2 to 3 years.
These buildings are really in bad shape, and the litigations of anyone getting hurt was getting so high, so we decided to either have somebody take them down, but burning them was the first option, so we did.
The site was originally known in Yupik as Nunapit Singhak, which translates to Great Little Land. Interviewees featured on a website documenting the site's history describe a complex mix of positive and negative memories. They range from the sense of belonging and discipline the home provided to the pain of isolation and punishments doled out when residents spoke in their Alaska Native languages. The experiences of those who lived at Nunapit Singhak are not only bound up in the disruptive forces of colonization, they are also closely tied to the fallout of influenza epidemics that predate the children's home and the ravages of tuberculosis that overlap it. According to the Moravian Church in America, in its early years, the home also took in children orphaned by domestic violence, as well as those, quote, deemed unruly. Up until its closure in 1973, the site also took on the role of boarding school and foster home, according to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. In the decades since its closure, the site fell into varying states of disrepair. Nikolai and others in Kwethluk fondly remember 4th of July gatherings there that would bring people from across the lower Kuskokwim region together.
That was when the whole area got together over here to come out here and do the 4th of July carnival, something like that. The highlight used to be when men used to jump in a boat and they'd all line up 6 or 7, 8 or 9 boats, and then they would row all the way down to that bend down there.
Kwethluk resident David Epchuk remembers visiting his sister and brother-in-law who were caretakers of the property after its closure.
The last time I went up there was around 1973 summer. I went up there and gave them some salmon.
But in recent years, many say the site became a serious public safety risk. Kwethluk resident Peter Jackson says he went up to the children's home around a decade ago just to check it out.
When I seen everything being torn down, written down on everything, no respect for the people that used to stay there, no respect at all, these younger generations.
Rumors of occult activity, illegal drugs, and teenagers up to no good also swirled. Alexander Nikolai, who took part in Wednesday's burn, says the concerns in his community are real.
adults, grandpas and grandmas that been hearing about the cult thing, they just wanted us to do this a long time ago.
Whether for negative or positive reasons, in both its painful past and in modern times, the Moravian Children's Home has become a household name across the YK Delta. Soon, it will live on purely in memories. It remains unclear exactly when the church plans to burn the remaining structures, or whether the local native corporation that owns the land has plans for further cleanup or recovery of the site. It did not immediately respond to a request for comment. With reporting from Samantha Watson in Queethlook, I'm Evan Erickson.
White people kill for fun.
Our big story tonight at 5, an eerie discovery off the shore of Kenosha Park. Police say someone found a woman's body in Lake Michigan.
Our Durante Matthews live at Eichelman Park with what we know so far about this investigation. Durante?
Well, Ted and Mary, right now police say they're working on identifying that woman. They say someone found her body just before 5 last night in this park. Now, today we spoke to folks who say they're out here enjoying the park today, but the news of that body is still on their minds.
Ronald Dawson is new at beach hunting.
And if I can find jewelry, coins.
Scanning the sand at Eichelman Park, he's hoping to find something sweet and surprising.
So far, I'm up 1 penny and a couple of beer cans.
The coins and cans are a stark contrast to what someone else found just feet away less than 24 hours earlier.
I believe there's a body by the rocks near the beach.
Kenosha police responded to the park Sunday afternoon after getting a call that someone found a body.
This is a little bit close to home.
Police say the body was concealed in the Lake Michigan break wall. They say after sending it over to the medical examiner's office, they discovered that the body was a female.
We could see the fire truck over here.
Mike Johnson says he's no stranger to hearing bad news in the area, but it never gets easier.
It's always sad when you hear somebody losing their life any time, but also especially down by the lakefront.
Investigators are still working to identify the woman, but the uncertainty is unsettling for those who live nearby.
It's, very scary not knowing what the situation was and how it happened.
Karen Smouse says this is not going to prevent her family from coming out to the park, but it is a grim reminder to stay vigilant.
Makes you more cognizant as to what's going on, around you when you are out, and looking out for your fellow human.
Prayers out for the family, because that's, somebody's daughter or mother.
Now, police were not able to give us any descriptions of the woman nor her age. They say information is very much limited right now, but they say detectives are actively working to investigate her death. If you have any information on what may have happened, please do want to hear from you right away. Reporting live in Kenosha, Durante Matthews, Fox 6 News.
Durante, thank you for that.
A terrible thing to waste. Environmental racism and its assault on the American mind. Written by Harriet A. Washington.
Yesterday, the Environmental Protection Agency announced what it called the biggest deregulatory action in U.S. history. The proposed rollbacks would impact dozens of rules, from emissions limits for power plants and vehicles to waste water regulations and air quality standards. Stephanie Tsai has more.
Now, the EPA was created by President Nixon in 1970, in essence, to protect the air we breathe and the water we drink. Under later presidents, that mission expanded to addressing greenhouse gases, which contribute to global warming. Now, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin says his agency wants to drive a dagger straight into the heart of what he calls climate change religion. With the stated goal of unleashing energy, Zeldin's proposals include a call to upend the basis for all the EPA's climate change actions. To help us unpack some of this, we're joined by Zach Coleman, who covers the topic for Politico. Zach, just describe the scope and scale of these proposed changes.
This is the most sweeping rollback of environmental rules in the nation's history. We're talking about going back to the 1970s era, where these rules didn't even exist yet. So this is potentially erasing decades of climate and air pollution rules. But again, this is also going to be something that's litigated in the courts. So we don't quite yet know exactly where this will end up.
So among the dozens of rules proposed, that would roll back environmental protections. Zeldin also made it clear that he wants to revise the conclusion that greenhouse gases endanger public health. That was a scientific finding reached by Obama's EPA in 2009. Here's what Zeldin said yesterday.
I've been told the endangerment finding is considered the holy grail of the climate change religion. For me, the U.S. Constitution and the laws of this nation will be strictly interpreted and followed. No exceptions. Today, the Green News scam ends.
And indeed, this finding, as I understand it, Zach, is foundational to all the EPA's climate change regulations. What would it take for the Trump administration to overturn that?
It would take a lot. I mean, you have to come up with science that says the thing that we know is not true, that global warming isn't happening and that humans are not contributing to it and that climate change isn't a problem for public health and the environment. It doesn't seem clear how exactly they would be able to accomplish that. The other potential avenue is a legal avenue, and it's not yet clear exactly how the Trump administration would pursue that. Again, the Trump administration tried to roll back a lot of environmental laws in its first term, and it lost a lot. It did not succeed in many of those cases. So a lot of this is up in the air, but it's very clear that these are enormous strikes against foundational climate law and science.
I just want to follow up on that. If the end goal is for the Trump administration to get this back to the Supreme Court, is there a world in which you envision a conservative-leaning court actually relitigating the case that brought us to the endangerment finding?
I think that's one of the big questions, and it's certainly something that the Trump administration is willing to try. This is a 6-3 conservative Supreme Court, and there has been a lot of disdain in the Republican circles about the decision that led to the endangerment finding. There's a lot of people who think that decision never should have been made. So I think there is very much an interest in testing whether this court would pick that up, and I think a lot of conservatives feel like they would be on pretty decent footing, at least compared to that 2007 decision that led to the endangerment finding.
Environmentalists and Democrats are slamming this announcement, saying it's about, quote, lining the pockets of billionaire corporate polluters. The Trump administration argues this deregulation will kickstart the economy and lower costs for everyday Americans. How are relevant industries responding, Zach?
Well, industries are responding positively to the idea of rolling back climate and air pollution regulations. A lot of them thought that the Biden administration policies were taking the markets to an unrealistic place. You look at auto sector in particular, where there were a lot of companies that said, look, we agree that we need to transition to electric vehicles, but the marks that you're putting down are a little too aggressive and they're not based on consumer preference. People aren't buying these cars at the rate that we would need to actually produce them to meet these rules. So there is a lot of applause from industry. However, there is some concern from industry circles and even some Republicans about going after the endangerment finding, which they think could be a distraction and actually could be politically demotivating to getting some of these regulations done.
I want to ask you one quick question. The EPA also announced it is shuttering its environmental justice offices. What could the immediate impact be there?
When you think about environmental justice, this is about helping communities that have been disproportionately burdened with pollution. They're often located near heavy emitting facilities because of political disenfranchisement, where people didn't get a chance to push back against things that they didn't want in their backyard. And if you get rid of those offices while at the same time lowering the floor of environmental standards for the entire country, it's really a double hit to those communities that have always taken the brunt of our nation's pollution and have the least ability to resist that being thrust upon them again.
Zach Coleman, climate change reporter at Politico. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
So living down L.A., California, what you say about Los Angeles? Still the only place for me that never rains. To living down L.A.
Hi, a news conference just wrapped up and the LA County District Attorney announced that he is filing criminal charges against the business and its owners. Now, that business is located right next door to Jordan High School here in Watts, where we are, and that recycling company has been under scrutiny For years now, the business and its owners are facing 24 counts, including felony counts, mostly based on illegal disposal of waste, according to the DA. Atlas Iron and Metal Company is also accused of improperly handling materials that could cause environmental hazards. Now, back in August, investigators served a search warrant at Atlas. It has been the center of complaints for years, but in January, students held protests calling for the business to relocate, sparking renewed attention. A former student said today that the scrap metal would rain on the schoolyard and the fumes were making students sick, and she felt unsafe.
The soil around our campus is contaminated with lead 75 times what the EPA has deemed safe, causing concerns for our safety and well-being. Shrapnel raining down on our school from explosions at Atlas Metals became a terrifying routine. I felt unsafe and constantly on edge. This was our normal, but it was not normal.
Now, they said this was a regular occurrence. Students and staff have complained about metal projectiles and metal dust coming onto the campus and problems with air quality for years. In 2020, the campus reported that steel projectiles flew onto the yard from the facility. The superintendent said that the business is creating an environment that is unsafe and disruptive to students, and they are seeking justice. Now, Atlas is involved in ongoing litigation with LAUSD. We did reach out to the recycling company for comment, but we haven't heard back. Reporting live in Watts, Kimberly Chang, KTLA 5 News.
To live and die in LA. Oh, to live and die in LA.
Once again.
Indeed. Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, March 15, 2025. So I have been told. This is our weekly compensatory call-in. Dial in if you have suggestions, questions, observations, news clips, or other happenings past 7 days or so. This broadcast intended for non-white people, victims of white supremacy, to better understand what white supremacy racism is, how it works, and things non-white people can and should be doing to solve this problem immediately. The number 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Let's see. We will be here on Monday, normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Tad bit of North Carolina history, which we have engaged in quite a bit of that over our 16 years of broadcasting. The 1898 Wilmington Purge, talked about that a few times, and then the lack of swimming pools in North Carolina. Variety of different content that we've discussed over the years, but should be here Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. History of white supremacy, racism in North Carolina. And in fact, some of the very folks that we were just talking about in Dr. Maya Angelou's memoir, they will be mentioned again on Monday. James Baldwin and such, Ozzie Davis, some of the exact same names that we just talked about, be coming up again on Monday. So looking forward to that. White guests only. Incidentally, for the people who just finished up with Dr. Angelou's memoir, I saw a video thumbnail today. She was speaking, Dr. Angelou, and it listed her title, Dr. Angelou, poet and historian. I was fit to be tied. Felt nauseous to my historian. What? When? How, when? Historian? What? She has like 1 billion honorary degrees. To my understanding, you get an honorary degree. That means either somebody thinks that you are really, really cool, or you gave a lot of money, or it could be a variety of reasons. You got a really nice purse that match your high heels, or whatever. But at the end of the day, you did not get on that Zoom and take, 100 credit hours. You did not and stomp around campus and go and take this class and write this paper and go to the library. When they put that honorary on it, it's asterisk here. Maybe you took a class or two, maybe you passed, maybe you didn't. Maybe you never even set foot on campus. You came one time, and that was when we gave you our wink wink degree. Come on. If you get an honorary degree, they should not give out like you got an honorary history degree, we give you an honorary psychology. It should just be we give you an honorary degree, and that's all this is. You got an honorary degree, and that's that. Dr. Maya Angelou, holder of many various honorary degrees. It is an honor to hear from you. Black, and I'm proud. Now, new book on Thursday. Cannot wait. I will give myself until Monday, see if something else catches my eye, which was possible. Have to see if anything happens. Never know. President Trump and all that. Really, if we had not read A Terrible Thing to Waste, Harriet A. Washington, that would be a candidate to read right now, but we've already read that. Any hoodles. New book on Thursday. Will be here on Monday. Invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive, listener-supported, counter-racist radio. Hit the blog racism-notes.blogspot.com. racism-notes.blogspot.com. Look in the upper right corner. You will see the PayPal button. Huge gratitude to all of the investors who have kept us on the air for 16 plus years. Hopefully we have not just been running off at the mouth, talking fool talk up here with my, hey, it's Dr. Gus T, my honorary counter-racism degree. Hopefully that has not been what we have been doing. Hopefully we have been accurate more often than not, and have helped victims of white supremacy, non-white people, get a more accurate, substantially more accurate understanding of what it means to be classified as white, and strategies that non-white people can use to help replace white supremacy with justice. You can also hit the wish list at Amazon.com, listed under Gus T. Renegade. Again, huge thanks to all of the investors who've nabbed an item or three over our 16 years of broadcasting. Hopefully we have been worthy of your time and energy. Now, get to specific content for this week. Guess I have to give out specific thanks. The only person who responded, a lot of times I'll ask questions and will not get replies, feedback from listeners. I've asked for workplace racism resources for years. I've got very little feedback. Now, I do think a large part of that is because most non-white people do not focus on, produce, seek out content related to countering racism in the workplace. So there's not as much material to find, unfortunately, because we need so much help there. But generally, people don't, even share from their own work experience. That doesn't happen most of the time. Untiljustice@gmail.com if you do have something to share. But last week, We played the report, Sade Robinson, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We played the report, 19-year-old who was murdered, that the tackiness abounds. They were going to do some sort of memorial just to mark that this young lady was killed so savagely and all the rest of it. And there was this vicious trifling out on, oh my God, use my tax nickels to put up some monument for this killed nigger gal. And oh my God, what is going on? Just because another black person got killed? That's what they said. They had in the news report in Wisconsin. So we played that, and I said, man, I don't know. Portion of me would like to speak with Miss Robinson's mother, Sheena Scarbrough. A portion of me would like to speak with her and, the questions to, hey, did you speak with your daughter, Sade Robinson? Did you speak with her about Jeffrey Dahmer? Right there, Milwaukee legend, Wisconsin legend, whole state lit up. And I said, I would love to ask her this. That question has been in my brain computer for the past year, but it feels kind of ghoulish, to have to go and track her down and chat it up with her. And same thing I said about Buffalo. How many times she's supposed to talk about what happened to her daughter and all the rest of it, and just felt super icky to have to go and talk to her. Nothing I'd be looking forward to. Irie responded immediately, hey, not having the easiest week herself and being an attempted parent, said, hey, nothing is more ghoulish than what that white race soldier did to Sade Robinson. No question. I mean, yeah, Gus T is uncouth, but nothing can compare with what that race soldier did to her. That is what is ghoulish. It will be ghoulish just talking truthfully about what happened, why this happened in a system of white supremacy racism. So, be courteous, empathetic, but yes, it would be constructive to chat it up. I thought about it and I said, that is logical. I don't think it would be difficult to be more ghoulish than what that race soldier did to Miss Robinson. So, pretty immediately after the compensatory call-in last week, we had that exchange. I messaged Miss Robinson, and for people who were with us, Neutralizing Workplace Racism this past Thursday, she called me while we were live on the air, Miss Scarbrough, right at the end of Neutralizing Workplace Racism. I looked at my phone and I recognized the Wisconsin area code just because all these years we've had guests on from Wisconsin, and listeners, and Rob formerly in Wisconsin, now in California. So I recognized the area code. It's like, oh my goodness, this might be Sade Robinson's mom. And then I recognized her voice when I answered the phone. Like, I can't believe it. Wow. So we ended Neutralizing Workplace Racism. I told her we were on the air. I'd have to call her back. So we end the program, call her back. We end up talking for 2 hours. Wow. Just wow. Man, for one, something happens, I don't get to say anything else. Miss Scarbrough has my highest regard. I mean, wow. Unbelievable person, and having to go through all I don't even have words to have to go through all of this, and in a system of white supremacy, victim herself, black female. But wow, I was just so grateful she would take time to even call back a total stranger who's on the opposite side of the continent from her. And then I called her back. She picked up immediately, and like I said, we chatted it up for 2 hours. Me, a total stranger to her. She didn't know I could have been, a plant somebody paid to spy for the race soldiers defense team. Go and talk to her, see if you can get some information, bring it back to us. Yeah. What are they talking about? Yeah. Give us a strat. She doesn't know. Man, and I will forever contrast her candor and willingness to speak, I will contrast the way she spoke with the way that these white people speak to us when they say, oh, I'm greatly pained about racism, and I'm greatly pained about racist jokes, or, George Floyd, or DEI, or whatever it is. I mean, even, okay, to put things like into perspective. So what did you talk about for 2 hours that you could say publicly? It has been a year, basically, since Sade Robinson, 19, was killed in Wisconsin by this race soldier. They have this publicly. This is in the newspapers and such. I think we'd even talked about this because we mentioned this case many times over the past year. I had just forgotten. Sade Robinson killed, dismembered. Miss Scarbrough reminded me I still do not have my child's head. Gus T. Renegade does not have children. No count as can be. But man, I've asked some retarded questions in my life, said some retarded things, done some retarded things. I don't know what I could do that would be more ghoulish. It's been a year. I still don't have my child's head. She said she had to wait 8 months to get some of the remains of Sade Robinson. Obviously, not the head. What to say? What to say? She said the white killer got a pod to himself. Now, it took my Negro brain computer even some time to process, even though I've heard this before, because Milwaukee legend Jay Dahmer, before he was killed by a black male in general population, he was not in general population. He had a cell to himself. I do not remember him having an entire pod to himself. I even had to process that, like, a whole pod? Like, what? And I think I said that because I was just trying to like, what? Just, yes, a whole pod just for he and the guards, who are probably white in Wisconsin. Wow. A whole pod? Wow. They didn't Khalif Browder him, I guess. Khalif Browder took a backpack and, hey, put you in a dungeon forever. Where is Sade Robinson's head at? You get a whole pod if you take somebody's head off. To yourself. You don't even have to share. Stretch out. Man. Miss Scarbrough, unflinching, as I said, these white people get on here and hemming and hawing, and anybody here that does have children, and you tell me, how long do you think it would take you to be able to speak coherently? They didn't just kill your child. You do not have your child's head. And no one has been convicted for this as of yet. How long do you think it would take before you could be composed and speak about this? Miss Sheena Scarbrough. Extraordinary. Extraordinary. I am so impressed. And as I said, it really an extraordinary contrast to all these cowardly white. Well, I can't remember no racist jokes now. Or I do remember some racist jokes, but I can't. That's just so gruesome. What's more gruesome than my daughter ain't got no head? She said, I can't talk to you about that, Gus. Let's ride. 2 hours. 2 hours. She reminded me Sade Robinson was a daughter. Yes. Sade Robinson had grandparents. She said, yes, I'm suffering. It's been terrible. What mom would not be out of their mind with all of this? And I still got to go sit through the trial. Sade Robinson's grandparents, they have been out of their mind. And I totally forgot about that. Like, oh, dang, I guess if you had an aunt and you all, got along, shared sweet potato pie occasionally, maybe they saw you as a child, they might be a little upset about this. Ditto for the grandparents, and then seeing their child suffer too, they might be a little upset about this. Sade Robinson was a sibling. She has a younger sister. 17. She's about to graduate high school. I can't even get my brain computer around that. I'm 17. My older sister has been killed by a white man. We don't even have a head. What am I supposed to think at 7? This is the world that I'm excited and going out into in my big... And then the town got trifling with the memorial. Hey, we don't take our tax dollars for these niggas. Wait a minute now. We paid for the Dahmer trial. You're not paying for no memorial now. Supposed to make memorial for all the Dahmer's victims. Get out of hand here. Wait a minute. Two of those news reports that you heard, Emily Pike, victim who was found dismembered in Arizona. Sade Robinson's mom said, yep, I just saw that. I had to stop reading the report, but I just saw this. That just happened this week. Emily Pike, Arizona, non-white female, found dismembered. That same thing. No one, but they haven't even arrested anybody there. Not all over the news because she doesn't look like Gabby Petito, so. The other report, they found the body in Kenosha. Kyle Rittenhouse. They found the body in Kenosha. In the report I played, they didn't have an identity. She has been identified. Kayla Sobczak. I'm going to spell it. It's S-O-B-C-Z-A-K. Kayla Sobczak. I'm not sure. My apologies. I'm ignorant, but I've never seen that last name before. S-O-B-C-Z-A-K, but non-white female. Again, Sade Robinson's mother told me about this case just this week. I said, how far is Kenosha from Milwaukee? I think she said less than an hour, not that far. They just found her, and she said, in fact, there are lots of cases like this. Non-white female. I think she said black females. Missing. And I said, I've heard this before. I know this is not Oklahoma. This is not the Kansas City area, but we did just talk about raping Roger Golubsky. We did just talk about Timothy Hazlitt Jr. in Exeter Springs, Missouri. Had that black female in a dungeon where she had the dog collar on and escaped. We had Bishop Powell on. We talked about that. We talked about that case for a while. That trial is coming up at the end of the year. Timothy Hazlitt Jr. in Missouri. But as I'm telling you all, this is what I told her. I said, oh, man, we've heard this before. And she said, what? Roger who? I didn't know nothing about this. What? Timothy who? I didn't know nothing about this. Can you send me some information? I said, sure, no problem, no problem. She said, dang. Where are you at again? I said, Seattle, 206, 206. That's a long way from Wisconsin. I said, yes, it's 2 time zones away, yeah. She said, wow. How did you find out about the Sade Robinson case? Do my diligence. Oh, okay. And the Golubsky, yeah, because that's in Kansas, and you're in Washington. How did you find out about that? Seems like you're on your assignment. Fuller word. That one did catch my attention. Most people don't use that term in common lingo, but yes, I have been on my assignment with this case specifically, maybe in general for 16 years, but certainly for Sade Robinson. And a big part of that is because what have we done for 16 years? Part of it is Neely Fuller Jr. when he said, now, maybe he changed his mind. People can rethink and reassess and all of that. But I mean, hey, 15 years ago, Fuller said, I normally don't put a name on it, but hey, if I was to boil down the essence of what is white supremacy racism about to one person, he said, Wisconsin's own Jay Dahmer. Why is that? That is what this system is all about. You can't even be a person. Man not. Woman not. I got to take your sex organs, put them in a jar and all this. Maybe even be affectionate with you. And then kill you. And rape you. Or switch the order around, And then save the body. Where is Sade Robinson's head? But Fuller looked at all that and said that is the essence of what this system is all about. That's why get Patrice Lumumba and put his teeth in a jar and save him for 50 years and brag about that. Lynch Zachariah Walker, put his testicles in. Claude Neal, indelectable Negro, cut his testicles off, cut his penis off and make him eat it. Tell us how good it tastes. That's white culture. Brag about that. And then keep the body right there. Jeff Dahmer style. Keep the bodies right there. I brag about my trophies. We heard that from the officers. I'm getting trophies here. We go out and sick the dog on them, and I get trophies from the niggers. Keep a finger. Keep a toe. Keep a testicle. Keep a whole head. Anyway, we spoke for 2 hours. She said, man, I called you on my phone. Talk to people on my phone. I said, dang, me too. Anyway, she said it repeatedly. I can't even say everything right now because the trial is coming up, which it is, end of May. I can't even say everything because the trial is coming up. The trial is coming up. You'll see at the trial. It's coming out in the trial. It's coming out in the trial. And she kept saying that. Man, the first thought that came to my mind, being truthful, I have Buffalo on my board twice. Going to Buffalo. Peyton Gendron. Death penalty, not just murder trial. Death penalty trial. Tops Buffalo shooting. That was the whole reason for going there the first time around. Let's go. And for the same reason. What all was the planning? Did you have help doing it? Give me all the details. Let's get all the details in the light of day. Man, she said it enough times. And then she said, if you come to Wisconsin, maybe I can take you to meet some of these other black females. Their children are missing too. I was thinking to myself then, hey, you would get a practice run for a murder trial. The important one is Buffalo, but I mean, hey, I have never been to a murder trial. You would get a practice run for a murder trial, and I could take the Jeffrey Dahmer tour in Wisconsin. Going to Milwaukee for the Sade Robinson trial. I do not even like to try. I just last week said if I was about traveling, it would be Germany. I just said that in the archive. I said, what is going on? Spirit of Dr. Welsing, Germany. People have an easier time traveling. Counter-racism research trip to Germany. What is going on? What Spirit of saying? I just said that. I had no idea. You're going to talk to Sade Robinson's mom for 2 hours. Let's go to Wisconsin just for 2 weeks. I'm hoping this will be a short trial. It's one victim. I think 14 days in Wisconsin should be enough time. Dahmer, trial, other victims of racism, and skedaddle back to Washington State. That will be the plan. And if we can execute going to Wisconsin to cover the Sade Robinson trial, like the goal would be, come back, report every day. What did you hear? Where's her head? Where's her head? Come back, report every day for the trial. Write something as well. Do same thing for Buffalo. And that would be the greatest May in the history of the cows. If things are planned correctly, that would be Seattle International Film Festival is in May. They just said, hey, aren't you supposed to get your journalist credentials? See if they'll let you go to the festival again. Might be another soundtrack to coup d'etat. To do the festival and then go for the murder trial for May. Wow. That was not on the, I guess the festival was, but I mean, that's right here. Not having to travel. Wow. What a spring. And then we still do Buffalo in the art, like greatest year of counter-racist broadcasting in the history of the cows. Ever, ever, ever. That would be something to invest in. Unless, now, if Rob in San Diego is listening, now, Brother Gus, I know all about some Wisconsin. 2 weeks in, you might not last 2 weeks in Wisconsin. You was on here whining and crying about Los Angeles. Wisconsin ain't LA. I don't know if you're going to like 2 weeks in Wisconsin. That might be true. And especially, this is not even Wisconsin. This is Milwaukee specifically. I don't know. I have been to Wisconsin before, and even in a counter-racist capacity. Me and Soothing Lotion, victim of white supremacy, Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., were there for a whole week. We didn't have to stay for 2 weeks for the White Privilege Conference, but we were in La Crosse, Wisconsin for an entire week, broadcasted every day, twice a day sometimes. Got fussed at for not hugging a white woman. It was wacky times in Wisconsin. I was there in the springtime in Wisconsin too. Anyway, there you have it. That would be reason to invest. Folks have said, man, gosh, you sound surly and grumpy and all that. I am on my counter-racist grind. If anything, I just told you, this is the plan for the year. Festival, May. Sade Robinson murder trial, May. Buffalo, autumn, 2 months. Buffalo, because I suspect that trial could be lengthy. All those victims, and that could be 2 months. 2 months in Buffalo, and then the rest of the time is filling in for February 19th and the books that I acquired. Part of that is Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So just adding that, the whole year is full. What that means is not wasting time and energy. I moved the prayer around and everything in advance. Maybe I knew maybe something like this could happen. not wasting time and energy. There are a substantial number of C.O.W.S listeners who still make guest suggestions, and the bulk of them are for non-white people. Please refrain from making guest suggestions for the rest of the year. I do not need any assistance picking guests or books for the remainder of the 2025 calendar year. The calendar is full for the C.O.W.S. Unless you can tell me something that Sade Robinson, like, yeah, why are you covering that? I don't really care what happened to her head. Aren't there more constructive things to cover? Now, if that's true, let me know. Wisconsin is not on my list of places that I was really excited about going back to, or Milwaukee, where I've never been to. Like, that was not on my list for bucket list, nothing. But having spoken with Ms. Scarbrough, yes, Sade Robinson murder trial. I think that would be very constructive, and even for posterity's sake, because this case has not been covered, which she said she said so many times. If Sade was a white girl, ... You can just fill in. She said that so many times. Then every time, if this was Gabby Petito, what's the little John Benet Ramsey out in college? Man, that was 30 years ago, and they talk about that every day. They got brand new cases and new and breaking information. John Benet Ramsey's parents, I believe, are both dead, and they're still talking about that. Sade Robinson, it hadn't even been a full calendar year. Man. What about them Bucks, man? We gonna get Giannis, Dame? You think they gonna get it done? Find her head later. We gonna get that championship this year, man. The Bucks. Anyway, invest. If you think Gus T for this calendar year, Wisconsin, 2 weeks, cover the Sade Robinson murder trial, and for Jeff Dahmer, man, I do not think Neely Fuller Jr. changed his mind, although I am not a mind reader and I could be wrong. I do not think that is for no reason. That was part of it right there, because she asked me, she said, man, how did you hear about this case in Washington State? And it hasn't been covered. And I had to give her context. I said, man, we have been talking about Jeffrey Dahmer for over a decade. He is core to our understanding of what racism is, how it works, what it means to be classified as white. Paying attention to what Mr. Fuller said, if I had to pick a white person that represents what it means to be white, Jeff Dahmer, Milwaukee. Okay, didn't we read Lionel Dahmer? And I told her, I said, we have a book club. We read Jeffrey Dahmer's dad's memoir recently, too. And I even slowed down. I said, man, Miss Scarbrough, he takes all this time and talks about what a miscreant and a demon his child is, and raping children and black children and non-white children and all this and all that. But Jeff ain't no racist. You don't sit around here and call my child no racist. And I am offended because he chopped up and hacked up and ate up a whole lot of folks, white people and black people. He was an equal opportunity child rapist and everything. Sit around here and say that Jeff and I'm as offended as I can be. Lionel Dahmer, we read that one, 2023, I believe. Catherine Massey Book Club. Any hoodles. And one of the, at least for myself, funny, I told her we have the book club. She says, wow, can I join the book club? Can I participate? I was hesitant because I generally do not have, a guest capacity, something like that, where they'll say, oh, book club. I can join the Catherine Massey Book Club. Would love to have Sade Robinson's mom join us, but I was thinking like, oh man, I've been told I do not have the best behavior in general, And then certainly on the Catherine Massey Book Club, partly because it has been poorly attended, mostly, for the 13 years that we've had it. So generally, I feel like I can just say and do what I want because, people don't participate in the book club. But, man, I even reflected Dr. Maya, like, so are you going to send Sade Robinson's mother the book club of Dr. Maya Angelou, and you saying about every other sentence, Mad Dog 2020, and it's Saturday night, I'm black, and I'm man, woo! It's like maybe we could pick a different book to send her, or the Jeffrey Dahmer. We send her that one maybe, and hope, pray that my behavior was a little bit better for that book club. Said maybe you'll think about that in the future, that it might be something serious, or someone does need to listen to the book club so that you do not act a fool as we are discussing literature every Friday. I will try and do better as we get to the new book. But Maya Angelou did mention the Mad Dog 2020. It's not like I brought that up on my own or anything. And she was, never mind. Anyway, but amazing chatting it up with her. Wow. She did say she'd be down to chat with us on the program. Trial is coming and all of that. May 27, 2025, which is wild because that would be like literally running out of the theater from the film festival to the airport to go to Wisconsin. If I can get my credentials and all that to go again. But like, wow, what a May. I was still kind of recovering from California. And anywho, Sade Robinson, you should make sure I told her the same thing. I said, I don't have children, but if I did, we would have to talk about this case a lot. If I had children, it might be two of us going to Wisconsin to sit front row and cover what all transpired. Oh my God, there's one more thing I can say. For attempted parents, you have children, if they're younger. She says, it's a different world with those phones and apps. We didn't have all that when I was growing up. They have all that stuff now. And she said it is so hard. Children, any era, children, they keep secrets from their parents, want to tell stuff and all that. But she said, man, it is so hard with these apps because they have apps and things that are designed where you can have, your secret little media platforms. You can be talking to folks and all the rest of it. And it's difficult. Like, even if your parents do go to check the phone, it'd be difficult to find it and all, like, just, woo, man. And her daughter was 19 and in college, so it's not like we're talking about a minor at this point. All of that said, wait as long as possible before you give that child a phone, especially a smartphone, anything like that. Plop them down and let them get a social media account, anything like that. Like, be really vigilant about all of that. No smartphone. And this is the why. It's not just we have draconian policies here because I don't want you to have fun and I'm taking away your childhood. Where is Sade Robinson's head? It's been a year and we don't know. If this is connected to all this started with somebody I met on an app, Jesus Christ. Nah, we'll have a dumb phone until you're 25 maybe. Anywho, can I connect Sade Robinson to Cedric Wilson? Retired firefighter, brought that up last week. Irie Dam, Louisiana. We were talking about Cedric Wilson. Man, that is another one I would talk to your offspring about in great detail and follow the case. That would be one right there when Fuller says no hanging out. Black culture is worthless. Stay away from black people. I don't like anybody here. Cedric Wilson. They didn't just beat on it. Said they bought boxing gloves. I was prepared. We were looking forward. I'm going to bash on my black brother. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Put the Mike Tyson on. Yeah, yeah. Black brother. Come on. Come on. Come on. The worthless Cedric Wilson, the worthlessness of black culture. Right there. And then after we done put the boxing gloves on and beat him down, he said, what we gonna do? We'll say he passed out. We playing basketball. Yeah, hide the gloves. Come on, man. That is about as pitiful as it gets. Now they got all these arrests and, come on. Why can't we do something constructive? That's what I mean. How we use our time and energy. Now, we're supposed to be enterprising young college students, paid all this money for tuition, books, classes. We're not trying to be like Dr. Angelo. We're trying to get a for real degree. Is that nasty? That's nasty. Right? She got honorary degrees, man. Like, hey, if she had put the correct date in for Rosa Parks and the Montgomery bus boycott, I wouldn't say things like that. And I have a for real history degree where I had to read books and go to class. They didn't say, Gus T, we like the cut of your jib. We just going to give you an old honorary history degree just because. They didn't do that. Anyway, Cedric Wilson, trying to get him a for real degree, engineering degree, and we need that. How we use our time and energy. Man, Cows Investor. Folks, remember Emmy? Listen to the archives, or if you've been listening for a while, she's dialed in bunches of times. She had to stop dialing in directly, not because she thinks Gus T is a coon, which may be true, but going to med school, which she told us about. I spoke with her a couple of days ago. It's been so many years. She is about to finish med school. How wacky is that on both ends? Just the time that has passed and accomplishment. Any hoodles. I told her listeners and myself, super proud and all the rest of it, especially because she said, man, talking to Neely Fuller Jr. and some of the exact things that he said, things that we talked about on the cows and neutralizing workplace racism specifically, I utilized to minimize problems so that I could get through med school. Super important. Being codified in the workplace, for sure, that's what med school is, the job. Being codified, not just here to be talking crazy and all the rest of it, and even my use of time and energy. I was able to confirm Dr. 2B in me. I said, man, did I get that right? Because you said it was a victim, black male, cool fella, no honorary degree, and he was not trying to replace white supremacy with justice. Nothing wrong with him. He wasn't name calling black people or whatever, but just he was not trying to replace white supremacy with justice. And she said, man, I don't think we're going to be able to spend too much time together because I'm trying to go to med school. I'm trying to replace white supremacy with justice. You don't have either of those as a goal. You're going to have me pulled off into some nonsense where I am wasting my time and energy. I might not even be like Neely Fuller Jr. where I get to live 9 decades on the planet. I might be a short timer. I got to use my time. Yeah, I can be courteous, but we're going to have to be on the clock courteous. We got about 5 minutes, and I got to be moving. And she confirmed. She said, yep, that is accurate. That did happen. And I say the same. Now, for real, this year, that's one thing. If you don't want to invest, you don't think going to Wisconsin is constructive, fine. You don't want to invest, you don't think going to Buffalo is constructive, fine. You can invest, share the program, that's one. Not wasting Gus T. Renegade's 2025 time. That means I do not want any emails in my inbox for the rest of the year about no black people you want on the program. That is so offensive. I have such contempt for that. I've said for years, it's white guests only. Do you see, like, pay attention. Pay attention. Do you see when I break that rule? It's not for anybody that you all say, go get Leroy, go get Lakeisha, go get Devontae on the program. It's for none of that. It's Sade Robinson's mom. Justice for Wyandotte. That's another one. None of you said get them on the program. We want to hear about Roger Golubsky. None of you. That's when I break the rule to say, oh, we need to get a black person on. the wildfires in California. Sharice Bremont, not one listener in California sent me a report about the wildfires. Nobody cares about them Negroes who got burnt up. Oh, well. That's when I broke the rule. Do not put no messages, social media. I don't care what they wrote about. I don't care if I'm mentioned in the book. I do not care. Nobody has sent me a message about a black person that I was interested in years. Not for the book club, not for the guests. What that means at minimum, and it might mean you all have a book written by a black person with a solution to the problem. That might be. We have different interests in literature at the minimum. I have said for this year, I'd said it before, but for this year, in the interest in not wasting time and energy, white guest only policy, Gus has different reading interests. Please do not waste my time and energy with non-white guest suggestions, book club, none of that. Every day is important. Got to be using my time, getting to Wisconsin and all the rest of it. So at the minimum, invest. I'm not going to waste Gus's time and filling up his inbox. We got to read my goofiness, name calling non-white people. None of that. None of that. None of that. Let's be serious. Let's be serious. If you got some tips, hey, this will help you get to Wisconsin. Let's get that. Let's get that. This will help you get to Buffalo. Let's get that. Let's get that. Let's get that. The rest of that, like, come on. Come on. No, I'm not interested in talking to Leroy about his new book. No, not at all. We'll catch Leroy in 2020. Actually, we'll still have a white guest only policy in 2026. So maybe I might be open to reconsidering then. But certainly for this year, tough luck for Leroy. Best of luck. I hope there's lots of other platforms where they talk to black people. Let's see. Quickly get to the folks who dialed in. Congrats to Emmy again. I'm sure I said non-white people who listen in, very proud. We need more black doctors. She said they had one black dude in her class, one, and we're not even sure if he's black. He might have a white parent or whatever, but black male privilege with the white coats. Let's see. Wow, so much from the reports. I guess if I had to say one, Robin Lawrence, black female who was murdered in Virginia in 1994. I'm thankful they finally arrested the white beast who stabbed her 49 times. But Robin Lawrence, killed in 1994 in Virginia, Gus T, worthless Negro from Virginia. With that case, I had not heard of it at all, and it happened in 94. Now, you know what happened in 1994. Orenthal James and stabbed up that white woman and Ronald Goldman and all the rest of it, allegedly. How is it that that's the only murder case that we know about from 1994? Like, stabbed 49 times? And her daughter, her young child, was in the house, sorry. 49 times? And the white fella, not because she owed me some money, not because she snitched on me and broke up my marriage and made me lose my time. I felt like killing somebody. Been overseas, battling in Iraq, Saddam, maybe he's a Vietnam veteran, who knows, but I'm a white killer. I got to do some killing, and, black mom around, you'll do. White peoples kill for fun. And they said this white beast that killed Robin Lawrence, he went out and had like a family and children and all, been chilling. He stabbed her 49 times and just out chilling, living his life for all that time. Now he's old and crotchety, like he can go, I think he got a 70-year sentence. He can go rot in prison. But I mean, the layers of it, literally, to me, that just sounds like I just go pick out a black person. I don't have nothing else to do. I'm bored. Ain't been able to get the war, been over for a while. I can't get. Remember we read Chris Kyle, American Sniper, and he had a child. He was married to a white woman, and he just kept going back. He just kept going back. And we were like, dang, you got a young new one. Why don't you stay home, be a dad? Want to go do some killing. He made a game out of there, notching, making. Oh, I love it. White people kill for fun. Robin Lawrence, not worthless Negro in Virginia. Black mom got stabbed 49 times. It's like Sade Robinson for no reason. For no reason. Let's see. I mentioned Emily Pike, Kayla Sobczak, Sobczak. Those are both non-white females. Emily Pike is in Arizona. Kayla Sobczak is in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Kyle Rittenhouse. And I will leave it there. Get to folks who dialed in, see if they have commentary they would like to share. The number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Let's see, folks who dialed in with a hand up. If you have commentary, proceed.
Hello.
Black female down in Georgia. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call. Hope everyone's having the best evening they can. I'm glad you were able to talk to Miss Robinson. Hopefully you do get to go to Wisconsin and partake in what you want to partake to educate not only yourself but other people. So thank you for that in advance. If you get to go. I was listening. I probably should listen because I know how to go back now and find archives. So yay on that. But I guess the Lincoln Heights activity that kind of piqued my interest because every time this, I guess in general, not just publicly, but every time Black people, we're just following the laws, following the policy, all of a sudden it's controversial. Because that's the first thing I had. Controversial? I'm like, what's controversial about following the law? If that's the law, we're following it. They said they're working with police. Doesn't sound controversial to me. But, if you're going to do things like that, you have to be ready for people to say things, even if they're small. Recently at work, something happened, and I asked some questions, and a few people agree with me. We have about 1,000 people that do my job. I put these questions out publicly in the workplace. Maybe 10 people were like, yeah, good questions, blah, blah, blah. So that's 1%, because 1,000 people, 1%, 10 people. A white coworker, all of a sudden I'm leading the resistance. I'm like, I'm asking questions. I'm not going to stop doing my job and do something totally different, but whatever. So I call myself the resistance now. You don't have to call me the resistance. Female calling Georgia's fine. But, family and friends, my new name's the resistance. It's just any little thing that they think will make waves. And again, I'm not making waves. I'm asking questions. And I thought about that. Mr. Fuller, not that unless I agree with everything he says. No one agrees 100% with usually what anybody says. But the asking questions, I believe, is excellent. And so that's what I did. I asked questions about this new responsibility, this additional work we were going to have to do. And, leading the resistance. I'm like, okay, whatever. So just, this year, I think in general has been challenging for a lot of people. It's just been, it started off with the New Orleans activities, and it seems like it's been that way the whole year. So, be mindful. I think I may have said this earlier in the year, not controversy, but things are going to come up that you may have to challenge this year. You can't just, whatever it is, we may have to challenge. So just think about what you're challenging. You don't have to fight every battle, I understand. There are a lot of battles to fight. You're one person. You may be all alone. But there are battles we are going to have to fight, things we're going to have to observe. and really be mindful. I think, like you said, about what we're reading, what we're watching, who we're talking with. I'm slowly getting better, but we definitely have to get better about those things if we want to, again, not only stop racism, but just have peace in your everyday life. I mean, it's something I think we really are going to have to fight for. Thank you. That's all I have right now. Have a good rest of the evening.
The resistance. Wow. Neutralizing workplace racism every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Allowed on compensatory call-in always. But that is very common, and that is name calling. Like nobody does it better. The masters of name calling, and frequently it will just be a non-white person exercising black self-respect, just often trying not to be a Negro, trying not to be mistreated. She said, I'm just asking a question. I wasn't out protesting, wasn't on no DEI, I didn't have my fist up, dashiki, Dr. Wells in quotes, none of that. I'm just asking questions about, new policy, new program, what we're doing here in the workplace. Oh, my, we got the resistance. Oh, where's your beret at? And it's the same thing when they call black people trying to replace white supremacy with justice. Oh, we got these militants. We got these radicals. She said it's controversial Negroes out here with firearms. Black identity extremists. Name calling. All of that is name calling. We will justify mistreating a non-white person, even if it's just a non-white person asking questions. What are you doing asking all these questions? Oh, just questioning Joe. Name calling. But yeah, I would say to the resistance, to her point, I think just with this year, the word, and I think other folks had been, the Black African had messaged me on social media with all of the instability and cuts here and cuts there and all of this, the word confusion and the other C word, chaos. I've been seeing them so frequently this year. When you have an environment, just like when COVID first started, where you have lots of people who are confused about basic things, like, am I going to have a job tomorrow, next week, 5 minutes from now? You do end up with lots more anxiety. Like she said, we feel like you have to fight for everything. It's a battle for, just a small bit of peace in the day. And the system of white supremacy is designed to keep non-white people from having any sort of peace. So certainly once, things in the environment that we're in now, where it's lots of widespread confusion about lots of things, yes, you can expect it's going to be a lot more anxiety and probably a lot more conflict, because that's what tends to happen when people are confused. Conflict. Number to dial, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Let's see, Lauren should be with us as well. Star 61 for other folks if you have commentary.
Yes, sir. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Evening, everyone. As far as those segments that you played, Gus, the part where it was talking about the Trump administration taking actions to scale back vaccine research, I thought that was interesting. I think they are taking lots of action to stop many scientists from doing their research, not just vaccines. And it's not, I don't know, I thought it was a white man, but there's really no way for me to know. But he said, this male, he said he was working on a vaccine for dengue fever, and he said he was on pins and needles and waiting for the other shoe to drop. metaphors. He said he was waiting on an email to cancel his grant. That's got to be a terrible feeling. Just being uncertain about your employment, what you're going to be able to do. If he is a white person, I think it'll be easier for him to get another job. In Alabama, when they were talking about the medical students learning how to cook food as medicine, I heard that a couple of days ago, and I thought that was a very interesting segment. Especially, they talked about minimally processed food versus ultra processed food. I've been even on the news and in the newspaper, people are using the term processed food like it's the same as ultra processed food, and basically all food that people eat is processed in some sort of way. I mean, even if you go, cut a piece of broccoli and bring it in the house and wash it and cut it up, that's processing. But I just thought it was constructive for them to learn about that, and also that he shared that the average person eats 100 pounds of sugar per year. I don't know if he meant the average person in the United States or worldwide, but that is a lot of sugar. The school teacher told to remove the signs from her classroom. It said she was at Lewis and Clark Middle School, if I heard that correctly. Lewis and Clark, those are two white men who were on the, white people funded mission to map and explore the Louisiana Purchase. And they were supposed to make a map of the Pacific Northwest, and they followed, they did a lot of what people call exploration and mapping. So I thought that was interesting that it was called that. And that sign she had, it said, "Everyone is welcome here." And they asked her, they said, "You were told this, that not everyone believes that everyone is welcome?" And she answered in the affirmative. Very interesting. It would be nice if they would just come right out and say the people who were not welcome. The lady Robin Lawrence, that was in Springfield. What state was that, Gus?
The Commonwealth of Virginia. Worthless Negro like myself.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you for telling me that. They were talking about the Moravian Mission School in Bethel, Alaska, this old building, and it's just not very much to do in Bethel, Alaska. I mean, they don't have trees, not much hunting. I guess they have the schoolhouse, which that's the same place Evan Ramsey did that school shooting in 1997. And I did note that they said the punishment was doled out when residents spoke in their native language. And, it was not that long ago where people went to these native schools, and they took in children who were orphaned by domestic violence and those deemed unruly. That made me think about Andre Bluin, or I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly, but that school that they were in too, they acted like those children were orphans as well, and they had parents. They just wanted to give them, surround them by white people and that sort of racist white supremacy ideology, if you will. The EPA part was very interesting. And also, Gus, you were talking about Sade Robinson and talking to her mother, and the murder trial. That white man wasn't charged with murder. He was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson of property other than a building. The trial is supposed to be in May. That stuff is really, they move those trials. They postpone the trials. They'll push them back frequently. So I wonder if it'll really be in May. And I was thinking about books that might be okay for her to listen to. Obviously, I think all of them are okay for her to listen to, but maybe Blind Eye by James Stewart, We Were Once a Family by Roxana Asgharian, A Mother's Reckoning by Sue Klebold, maybe A Father's Story by Lionel Dahmer, The Half Has Never Been Told, that was excellent. Crazy Talk, Stupid Talk, that was, you know, not super about racism, but it was short and it was very informative. Medical Apartheid, I thought it was great. Maybe a little too long for a first book club, though. And Warmth of Other Suns, also a good one, but maybe not for the first one. But I think those would be excellent books for a beginning listener to listen to. Because I think Warmth of Other Suns was like the second or third book I listened to in the book club. And just as far as things I saw in the news lately, like maybe today or yesterday, there was a thing on NPR, and it was called "Why People Are Arguing Nazi Salutes Are Just a Joke." And you know, they're talking about these white people doing these Nazi salutes the same way Elon Musk did it the day Donald Trump was inaugurated. Steve Bannon has done it lately. They're starting to do it more, and I don't know, man. White people are always with these jokes. You know, when they do something racist, they just act like they're joking. And also, I've been reading about Trump's interactions with Canada, and he keeps saying that Canada needs to become the 51st state. He threatened them with 50% tariffs and said that, you know, they wouldn't have to worry about anything. As a matter of fact, in the article, it said the only thing that makes sense is for Canada to become our cherished 51st state. He wrote on social media Tuesday morning. This would make all tariffs and everything else totally disappear. He added, in reference to the northern border, the artificial line of separation drawn many years ago will finally disappear, and we will have the safest and most beautiful nation anywhere in the world. So that I've read a couple of articles, at least one that mentioned him annexing Canada, which just is the euphemism for invading. And he also talked about that he was going to stop information sharing with Canada. He also did that with Ukraine after he had that, I don't know what you want to call that situation with Zelensky at the White House. So all these things are pretty interesting. I've been really paying attention to this realignment of the most powerful white people in the world, and that is all I have for now. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Much obliged, Lauren. The white people joking, that is one of the reasons why for years we focused on racist jokes, but that is, I guess, been a long part of the racist code. We can go out publicly, and I guess the more refined era, about the past 50 years or so, if you go out in public, say something, do something racist, he was just joking. He was just messing around. He was excited, the inauguration, he just having fun with his base, that sort of thing. The racist joke, same thing with the racist, just joshing. Yeah. Let's see. She was talking about the school up in that was close to Alaska, where the non-white children had been stolen, kidnapped, if you will. They had a number of films at the Seattle International Film Festival that were about that specifically, both here in the States and in Canada, of so-called Indians, non-white people, children being taken, abused, all the rest of it. Shout to Evan Ramsey. Let's see. Wait a minute. The report, when they talked about the food in Alabama, they had a fascinating metaphor in that segment where they said had to cough, where the physician that was speaking, he said, I was in the dark about talking about diet. There we go again. Always when you are poorly informed about something, you are in the dark. When I heard that segment where they talked about making food your medicine, nutrition, I did wince a little bit, because during my California sojourn, one of the things that I was most excited about was the Stanford Food Summit, which I mentioned before, and they had a whole lecture. They had this whole day of lectures, but that was one in the series that was titled Food as Medicine. And it was a whole day structured around plant-based eating for health moving forward. And like I said, I had registered before I even left Seattle. I was ready to roll. Got confirmed registration, and then they reneged and said, "Oh man, we had so much interest. We only gonna allow our Stanford folks to come, so later." Now this is online, so anybody can go on YouTube and watch this lecture. I think you can watch all the lecture series that they had for the day, but that's not the point. That said, the information that they had in Alabama, I've heard that before, where healthcare professionals, doctors and such, have said, I have no information about healthy food. Like, that's something that I would not even ask. How much sugar do you consume on a regular, like, what have you eaten today? To just kind of go through and parse out, oh, you had ice cream sundae? Oh, okay. How many sodas? Whoa, you had 2 liters of soda? Stop right there. Like, okay. Like, wow. I mean, but I've heard that consistently where doctors, say that is not a part of med school. That's not a part of what they taught. We are about Ozempic, drugs, and that sort of thing. It is not, how about let's get rid of that white sugar? How about put that ice cream back? Don't get pie. They had National Pie Day, 3/14, right? Which other? Don't get no pie, or put those donuts down. I don't care if they come to bring you banana donuts or don't eat the donut. Like, that's just not a lot of where they might tell you to lose weight, but again, the thinking is going to be more like Ozempic as opposed to get more broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus. Anyway, so what the ultra process now? We talked about that before. Good, better, best. And excellent point, Emmy, or excuse me, I had Emmy on my mind. Lauren raised that, just washing and cutting that broccoli is a form of processing. Heating, that is a form of processing. It's just we don't want that. And again, I think Z's mom said to make it plain. You got 10-year-old, 8-year-old you want to explain all this to. Can we make this at home? Or do we need all kinds of fancy machinery? Like, can we make these Doritos easily at home? No? Well, that's ultra processed. And then there you go. You can just apply across the board. Now, so Gus, what did you eat today? Because we talked about reading the labels and all that. And the less processed also, the label should be easier to read. It shouldn't be a lot of wackiness. It should be lots of things that you easily recognize. And the label listing should be substantially shorter. That's why I was talking about that app with Nick over the road and saying the better that you're eating, you will have less of a need for that app because it'll be 4 or 5 ingredients listed, and better yet, you're not eating out of a package. It's something that you cooked yourself. What did Gus T eat today? Now, one, I had a lot of tea. We got programs and such, so I had a lot of yerba mate that I made myself. And then I had organic dried pineapple that was amazing. I didn't even have that in my plan. I just saw it at the store and got some. That's what I mean about it. So good, better, best. Organic dried pineapple. What was in it? Pineapple. And there you go. Good, better, best. That's the way you want to get to eating. That's not every meal, but, and snacks, having that as opposed to Cheetos and a whole lot of Funyuns and all the rest of it. Fruits, no sugar added, and additives and colors and all the rest of it. Organic if you can, so you don't have all those pesticides and such, but way better option for eating and snacks, especially for children, so they don't get addicted to having Lunchables and the Chips Ahoy and Snickers and all that nonsense. So I had dried organic pineapple, no sugar added, and then you've got to be luxurious dried organic mango. What's in that? Mango. And there you go. That's what I mean. Good, better, best. No added. That way you don't have to go get the label and it's just pineapple. Whole foods, whole grain, peanuts, nuts, having those as snacks so you can eat more whole foods as opposed to lots of, I don't know what's in all of that. And no, we cannot make this at home. Let's see. In Ohio, just to make sure I comment on that really quick. Man, we had a listener ask me before. I give out *61, the number again, 605-313-5164, the code 564-943#. Press *61 if you would like to participate. We had a listener who, like a couple days ago, asked me about a firearm in terms of your counter-racism practices. We talked about this before. It was said today, if you are a non-white person and you are going to have a firearm, it just means you're going to have to be very codified and informed about the laws, regulations in your area, and just very codified in general. You know, if you have offspring, having a safe, it's stored, all of that. If they're old enough, training your offspring, even yourself having a code. We had Blacka, he called in, listener called in some years back, and he explained he had a traffic incident where he was almost hit in his vehicle, and he had his firearm with him in the vehicle at the time, and the enforcement officials were called, and he said before the officer arrived, he field stripped his weapon, totally disassembled it. You know, it's in about 4 or 5 different pieces by the time the officer arrives. And he told us that when the officer saw this, he had a big smile and he said, "Oh my goodness, you know, this would have been a totally different exchange if you had not field stripped that weapon." Because at that point, you know, the most you could, as a weapon, if you want to put that in quotes, the most you could do is throw it at someone. You couldn't even pistol whip someone because it's been disassembled. So I guess you could throw it at someone and, you know, knock them upside the head maybe. But the officer was so pleased, and wow, I feel so much safer that we don't have some armed raping Negro out here on the streets, and I don't know if I'm gonna have to tase and shoot you 180 times. Like, all right, we can do the vehicle incident, you know, whatever report, and move about our merry day. But it just means that you're going to have to be very codified. And in terms of going out and the parents in Ohio, we had talked about this before. We have listeners in Ohio, and they saw the news reports about the race soldiers, and they had signs. It was so white genetic annihilation. That's what I said when I played the reports previously, because it said things like, "It's okay to be white." White pride. It was lots of things like that. Like, Dr. Welsing would be. Anyway, but see, told you, white genetic annihilation. Eh? But they had been doing this for a while, as it said in the report. So these parents just coming out and saying they're protecting their children, nothing incorrect about that. Making sure that they get, you know, escort them to and from school. Black self-respect. Black self-respect. That said, anytime, if you're classified as black, especially, you have to be out in public. I wouldn't care if you're following all the laws, open carry, you went and took gun safety course, registered, and blah, 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 and all that. Black person out in public with a firearm, oh man, even if you didn't break a law, we are going to make up a law so that we can say that you broke the law. And I mean, that's the system of white supremacy. They had laws that black people weren't even supposed to have firearms for quite some time. We talked about that in context as well. But I mean, every time I can think of in history, if you want Robert F. Williams, talk about North Carolina history, Negroes with guns, or I was thinking not effing around. Now that's totally different in terms of what they were doing. But either way, black people with guns, even, in fact, I remember Micah Xavier Johnson. That was the black male who was murdered in Texas. They accused him of shooting and killing 5 enforcement officers, summer of 2016. During that whole fracas, there was a black male who had a firearm. Boy, they looked at the killer right to get him. Man, they went berserk. He got in all kinds of trouble and everything. I think they had his image on social media and what have you, accusing him. And he was a law-abiding citizen, law-abiding gun owner, proud Second Amendment, all that, right? And no, he doesn't look anything like Micah Xavier Johnson, but I remember it was a big kerfuffle, and they were like, dang, can you be a black person and be armed in public? In fact, I could write so many of these. It was a different, I think this is circa 2014. It was a black male. He attempted to enter a Walmart. Shout to John Crawford. He had a fake gun. Anyway, this is a different black male, 2014 circa. He attempts to enter a Walmart. Now, he also law-abiding. He has a concealed carry permit, not a black rapist, not looting, trying to go shop, maybe to even get some veggies at Walmart. White person sees him raping nigger with a gun and commits to whipping him upside the head, jumps on top of him, and you nigger, you come in here and beat us down. You saw what we did to John Crawford. Get out of our store. So they call the police, and the police get there, and they're like, wow, did you get the rapist? Okay, you got him. We'll take it from here, and watch yourself now. So they go through, and they find out, okay, so he has a gun. Oh, okay. But he's got the concealed carry. Okay, looks like he might be legit. Okay, no warrants. Looks like this nigger is okay. So then they go to the white guy, like, why did you jump on it? They end up arresting the white dude for assault, for jumping on this black dude. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's so many of these where if you are a black person legally with your firearm, that might mean you're going to be sitting all eyes on you for sure. You have to be super duper codified. Philando Castile, is that it? I thought I could stop. I feel like I've named like 4 or 5 different cases. Like, do we need the rest of the program? I can take up just naming cases of armed black people where it did not work out well. Just having a firearm is not going to keep you safe, per se. Not saying not to have it, just system of white supremacy racism. White people kill for fun. Black self-respect to the attempted parents escorting their children to school. I'm so glad I'm not an attempted parent. So many reasons. Speaking of Sade Robinson's mom and all the rest, I'm so glad I am not an attempted parent. Appreciate it. Lauren, note that pattern. Now see how many times you get black people who have been killed and they do not charge the white killer with murder. They get these old lame, it'll be homicide, whatever else, manslaughter, and all the rest of it, negligence, and like, can you murder a black person? Where is Sade Robinson's head at, by the way? It seemed like if you don't have a head, for sure, that should be like murder, even if it's not first degree. Anyway, other folks, if they have commentary, we'll give like 2 minutes, see if they have anything to share. Again, we'll be here on Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. White guests only. North Carolina history, COINTELPRO specifically. Talked racial matters and Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly's book, White People, Federal Government, FBI, local enforcement officers working as a coordinated system to attack black people, especially black people who have the audacity, Robert F. Williams and the like, going to work against white supremacy, racism. What? Spy on and your whole family. Big part of the text for Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I was telling Sade Robinson's mother, Miss Scarbrough, about what time the program comes. It's 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Now, she is in Wisconsin, of course, now. That is Central. She said, 8 p.m. Eastern? I'm in Central. They're like, I was like, my fault, 7 p.m. Central. I normally don't do the Central time. I leave them to figure out the math for the folks who are in the center of the U.S. and for the folks who are we can't do all the time zones in the world. We'll stick to the coasts of the U.S. and everybody else can figure it out. But Ms. Scarbrough said, Central, please? 7 p.m. Central. 7 p.m. Central. But much obliged. No murder charges for Sade Robinson. And the killer with a pod to himself. I'd like to see the dimensions. Like, how big is the pod? Like, how many inmates would normally be in this space that is occupied by one white person and the guards? I don't even know why you need guards there, per se. You could just have the cameras to make sure he hadn't killed himself or, whatever. Like, why do you need, and they said guards, like, plural. Why is that? Like, are they going to play Monopoly with him, keep him company, like, keep his spirits up until the trial and everything? I don't know. Incidentally, Miss Scarbrough, she did say apparently this white fella is from a very wealthy family in Wisconsin, and so I guess there have been efforts to postpone the trial, or it has been delayed, and then efforts to move it before. She said somehow it seemed, at least at this point, that they had tried unsuccessfully to get it moved again, and that failed. So it might, maybe, question mark, asterisk again, maybe get stuck on the 27th. But she said that they have been trying to evade justice. Anyway, make sure didn't miss anything. Bilal Sunni Ali, I did not know the name specifically, but we played so much Gil Scott-Heron on the program before. He just passed away, and he was a member of the Black Panther Party. Bilal Sunni Ali, privileged black male, just passed away. Anything else? Make sure. The school report in Idaho, Lewis and Clark School, where they said you can't have material that's going to inflame divisions. Metaphor. I don't even know what that means. Like, inflame division? Like, what? Are we back in the wildfires in the Palisade? Like, what? Inflame divisions? You would have to explain that to. I'm 6. What, inflame divisions? What does that mean? You got a rash? Let's see. I mean, folks I would share those reports about Emily Pike and Kayla Sobczak as well, because they are so young and they are all non-white. Now, Robin Lawrence, that case is from 1994, so that's way back, but even still, I would share that as well. She was killed in her house with her child there, and even for all these folks acting like they're so upset, Orenthal James, he got away with murder and killing. What about Robin Lawrence? She was stabbed 49 times. I could barely even find any information. Like, I'm sure they, in Virginia, Commonwealth area, had local news reports and what have you. People that live in the VA area can check and see. But, I mean, the true crime community, all those white chicks, they didn't do no, stories about this for 30 years. They didn't even have anybody, like, no suspects, no nothing. Her child, for this to happen where her mom gets killed in that savage, gruesome manner, and for all those decades. Worthlessness of black life, for sure. Miss Robin Lawrence, stabbed 49 times by a white killer who, I just wanted to kill somebody. Any hoodles. Let's see. Looks like everyone is satisfied. Grand. So we will be here Monday, normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. North Carolina, white supremacy, racism. There's so much of it. And the new book, I will maybe be decided by Monday, see if I change my mind or what have you, but new book for Thursday, Catherine Massey Book Club. Much obliged, folks. Tuned in, hopefully worthy of your Saturday evening. Sobriety would be best. We need high-functioning Cedric Wilson, 20 years old, engineering student. That's what we need. Preserving our brain computer. We don't need no boxing gloves upside the head, which is actually in Julie Stamm's book. Not knocking folks upside. In fact, that's even Jessica Wallace. Julie Stamm told us about Jessica Wallace. That's exactly what she said. Jessica Wallace said, yeah, you should avoid tackle football. Bad for your brain computer, especially if you are young. But the real risk for damage to the brain computers of black children, black males in particular, is off the football field. That's exactly what she told us during the 2023 Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts and them lost that one. Roll Tide. Cedric Wilson. They put the boxing gloves. We playing. We was excited. Told people they probably put that on Instagram. Like, look, got my gloves. I'm ready, boy. I'm gonna put pow. I've been practicing. I got my jab, my uppercut, pow. Bust him up. Boom, boom, boom. Black culture. Creator, help me maximize my time and energy to replace white supremacy with justice ASAP. Help me to stop wasting non-white people's time and energy, including my own. Minimize contact. Minimize conflict. Stop name-calling black people. Stop being discourteous to black people. Stop gossiping. Stop producing throwaway offspring. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. If folks got Mr. Fuller's list of films, that is phenomenal. Wow. You can learn quite a bit, both about Neely Fuller Jr. and the era that he lived in and the system of white supremacy. What an amazing list of films. I had seen a number of these, like Wild River that I mentioned yesterday. I had seen that years ago, but a number of these I had not seen. Wow, he picked some phenomenal films. That was one I can end with. I had said we should do reviews of the films on Fuller's list. That would encourage writing, and then people would have to read the reviews, right? I guess you could do a video review as well, but I don't know. You all can let me know. I guess one, you'd have to have Fuller's list of films, which he did make public, so you should have this. And we love TVs. But his list of films is amazing. Maybe we could do reviews of all, because it's so big, people could pick one or two and then write reviews. I'd be willing to share. We could talk about it. I don't know. Let me see reviews of Fuller's films. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.